Restef, Joanna's going to go first.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah. Prof. Levy, I met you at MIT, the media lab.
Yeah. The picture. I look at your picture on the Zoom, and I thought to myself that I think I've met you somewhere, and I suspected it was at MIT. So
Yes.
Yeah,
I was surprised that there is someone from talking about agriculture, because in our MIRA meetings and so on, they don't really mention that part one. So I was about to meet you in person, but everybody was so busy. So yeah, I'm so glad that you're here.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Sinsky, for bringing him.
Oh, he's great. He's a great collaborator. He's got a tremendous experience background, and most importantly, he's really smart.
I can, yes.
I can only fail now, Tony, with such
right.
such a high bar.
Okay. Good morning, dear professors and also our participants. We will start our international webinar. I'm really sorry for cut the talk off, but we will start our international webinar in 1 minute. So thank you very much.
Dr. Mada, this is already 8 o'clock. Maybe we can start because Dr. Zed.
Okay. Well noted, Professor. Thank you very much. Okay, well, to our dearest participants, keynote speakers, and special guests, welcome to the international webinar in Universitas Diponegoro, Semarang. Please let me to welcome you to our lovely university, even though we cannot meet in person. I am really honored to be the master of ceremony for today. My name is Amada Triandala Sibro, lecturer in Faculty of Fisheries and Marine Science, Universitas Diponegoro. This international webinar is supported by Ministry of Education and Culture, Republic of Indonesia under World Class Professor Program to Professor Retno Murwani from Faculty of Animal and Agricultural Sciences, Universitas Diponegoro. We hope that you will not only enjoy this webinar, but also we can build a collaboration in line with our webinar topic and title, Improving Food Supply Chains Through Data Analytic, Regulation, and Rapid Detection Capabilities. Ladies and gentlemen, as the Master of Ceremony, I would like to welcome and express my gratitude to our distinguished keynote speakers for today. They are Professor Dr. Anthony J. Sinsky from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Professor Joan de Zeger from Operation Management of MIT Sloan, Professor Restef Levy from MIT Sloan School of Management, Charlie Swalber, PhD from the Sinsky Lab, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Professor Purwiyatno Haryadi from IPB University, and also Vice Chair of Codex Alimentarius Commission and Akademi Ilmu Pengetahuan Indonesia or AIP, and Bapak Adi Lukman from Indonesian Food and Beverages Association or GAPMI, and also from Akademi Ilmu Pengetahuan Indonesia, AIP. Ladies and gentlemen, to start our webinar, I invite to all of us to sing together Indonesia's national anthem, Indonesia Raya.
Yeah, that's enough volume. There is no sound, Mada.
Yes, Professor. Someone also shared the screen. So this is not me or Evan. Anyone who shared the screen? Miss Riana Friska, please unshare your screen. Miss Riana Friska, please unshare your screen because we want to share the. Okay. Please.
Who is Miss Rina?
Well, one of the participants. Okay, now everything's okay. I will share the video. I'm really sorry for inconvenience, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your attention. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in this international webinar, we have several important messages to every participant. First of all is the exoneration clause. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the committee is freed from all legal responsibility for all legal consequences that occur for the virtual services provided. And the participants are considered to know and agree to personal responsibility for all consequences arising from the choice of virtual services provided by the committee. And then we also have seminar manners. First is please turn off your microphone so we will not hear other voices or sounds except from our keynote speakers and moderator for today. And then please do not interrupt during the keynote speakers presentations. Please ask question in the Q&A session. So you can type your question in the Zoom chat room. Then me and also the moderator will choose which question will be asked to the keynote speakers. And then in giving questions, please mention your affiliation and to whom the question is directed. Ladies and gentlemen, for today's session is very special because at the end of this event, the committee will choose 6 until 10 best questions to get special door prize. So make sure that you will join these whole seminars and then you can give questions to our keynote speakers. They are amazing, they are very outstanding, and we can choose. Maybe you are the winner of the special door prize for this morning. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope these important messages could be understood by everyone. And for the participant statistic report, we are really glad to welcome 247 participants who registered themselves to our system. We are really glad to know that the participants are not only from Indonesia, but also from Singapore, Malaysia, and also USA. In addition, the participants of today's seminar is dominated by students, lecturers, researchers, and industrial workers. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe you already can't wait to listen to our distinguished keynote speakers. But before that, to officially open this international webinar, I would like to invite Professor Ambarianto. Ladies and gentlemen, a short introduction for Professor Ambarianto, PhD. So Professor Ambarianto is the Vice Rector for Research and Innovation, Universitas Diponegoro. Professor Ambarianto obtained his Bachelor of Fisheries from Universitas Diponegoro. Then he continued his master in University of North Wales, Bangor, UK. and then he did his PhD and also postdoctoral at the University of Sydney, Australia in marine ecology. Well, Professor Amarianto is professor in marine biology and also the national coordinator for IU Green Matrix University ranking, and also he devoted himself in the Center for Coastal Disaster Mitigation and Rehabilitation Studies, or SDG Center at Universitas Diponegoro. Without any further ado, please welcome Professor Amarianto.
Thank you, Mada. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning, everyone. On behalf of Universitas Diponegoro, I would like to welcome all participants of Universitas Diponegoro International Webinar with the topic Improving Food Supply Chains through Data Analytics, Regulation, and Rapid Detection Capabilities. Special thanks would like to the speakers. First, for Professor Anthony Sinsky from MIT, USA. Thank you, Prof. Professor Redzat Lebwe from MIT Sloan School of Management. Professor Joan de Zever, Operation Management of MIT Sloan. Charlie Software, research scientist from MIT. Professor Purwoyatno Haryadi from IPB University. And Mr. Adi Lokman, Chairman of Indonesian Food and Beverage Association, and Professor Retno Morwani from Diponegoro University as moderator. This webinar is conducted in relation to world-class professor program from the Ministry of Education and Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this topic is quite very interesting, but also very strategic, especially in relation to food supply chain. As we know that food is very important for human life, our life. We can say that without food, there is no life. But if food can be produced, it requires an effective and efficient distribution to consumers. Not only that, actually, food safety and food quality are also major requirements. This is where the importance of good food supply chains. During this pandemic, it is also interesting to see how COVID-19 has been affecting food supply chain around the world. As we know that this pandemic is not going to end very soon, proper policy, I think, needs to be taken by the governments to overcome or minimize the problems during the pandemic era. If we see from the title of the presentation of all speakers, it seems that this discussion is really a multidisciplinary approach on food supply chains. So again, it will be very interesting to see what all speakers will share based on their area of expertise. I'm sure we will all learn a lot from all speakers. With that, I would like to end my opening remarks. I really hope that this webinar will have a good, important results and probably some suggestions to the government, especially in improving food supply chain in Indonesia. Thank you again to all speakers for sharing your knowledge to all of us. Thanks also to committee, especially Dr. Mada Sibiro, for arranging and successfully conducting this webinar. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Professor Amarianto, to officially open today's international webinar, and a very warm welcome to everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, to start this international webinar, I would like to introduce to you our outstanding moderator. So for today's international webinar, I would like to invite Professor Retno Morwani, PhD, from Faculty of Animal and Agricultural Science, Universitas Diponegoro. And today, Professor Retno Morwani is our lovely moderator. A short introduction about Professor Retno Morwani. So Prof. Retno Morwani, she obtained her bachelor from IPB University at the Department of Science and Technology. And then she pursued her master's degree in biological chemistry at Tokyo University of Agricultural Science in Japan, and her second master in biotechnology at New South Wales University, Sydney, and then she did her PhD in biology at the University of Sydney. So Professor Namuwarni is professor in nutritional biochemistry. She is also head of Food and Nutrition Society or Pergizi Pangan for Central Java, and also member of IPGIP, the Academy of Food Science and Nutrition, Indonesian Academy of Science. Well, without any further ado, please welcome Professor Ratna Murwani, PhD, our moderator.
Thank you, Mada. I'm looking at the at the clock because Prof. Desager has to present soon. So then our first speaker is Professor Dr. Antoni Jasinski. He's a professor from microbiology and also faculty director of the MIT Center for Biomedical Innovation. And Mada, can you share his CV very quickly? He's also co-director of Malaysian MIT Biotechnology Partnership Program, co-founder biotechnology company Metabolics Gensem Corporation, natural pharmaceutical, and REMARK Pharmaceutical and Teva. He has given more than 300 presentations in international scientific meeting and congress, more than 300 scientific papers in peer-reviewed journal, 31 patents, 30 intention disclosure, and he conducts interdisciplinary research and metabolic engineering. Okay, without delay, please welcome Prof. Jasinski. Your time, Prof. Jasinski.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and participate in arranging this very timely conference. As we've heard in the introductory remarks, we're under serious economic situations throughout the world, pandemic situations, as well as which will also impact the health and wealthiness of nations. I'm very fortunate to have really a dynamic collaborators at MIT to present to you today. And our first speaker, am I speaking too fast?
No, you are fine.
Okay. So I don't want to take much of your time because we want to make sure you get the content of the talks. So I'd like to move on right now into having Professor Joanne D. Zeger give her presentation.
Sure, yes.
Hi, thanks. Should I just share my screen?
Oh, yes. Are you already here,
Hey,
Dr.
I'm
Jones?
here.
Oh, yes. Then I have to, okay. I have to introduce you very quickly that Prof.
Okay.
John Desager is a professor at Maurice F. Strong Career Development, and then also assistant of operation management at MIT Sloan. And she affiliated with the operation management groups, the Operation Research Center, and the Sustainability Initiative. She examines the design of technology and algorithm that address supply chain challenges and developing in emerging markets, especially informal markets, by combining methods from large-scale fieldwork, optimization, computer science, econometric, and action research. And she closely collaborates with a range of partners, maybe you familiar, including Element AI, Unilever, that's in Indonesia, Link Aja, the Isara Institute, and MUFG Bank. Yes, please welcome, and time is yours, Prof. Zeger.
Terima kasih.
Sama-sama.
Okay. Can everyone see this? Apakah semua bisa lihat?
Joanne, could you put it in slide view? Yeah, great.
Is this good? Can you see the big screen or can you see my presenter view?
No, I see the way I should see it. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Okay, selamat pagi semua Bapak Ibu. Selamat malam di sini waktu Boston, tapi selamat pagi di sana ya. Terima kasih
Nice.
untuk presentasi ini ya. Boleh saya akan lanjut di bahasa Inggeris supaya semua bisa mengerti.
Yes.
Okay, so good evening, everyone, or good morning in Indonesia. So Anthony asked me to present some of my ongoing research that I'm doing with partners in Indonesia. I just want to give a heads up that this is very much ongoing work. So I'll just kind of twist. I can hear a bit of an echo. Is that just me or? Okay. Great. So my name is Jen Ziger, and I'll be presenting this ongoing work. It's work with that I'm doing at MIT, but also with collaborators at Stanford University, Diameter in Indonesia, PEMPEM in Indonesia. We are starting some work with Lingkaja in Indonesia, and this is also funded by both the JWAFS initiative as well as the Good Energies Foundation. So the high-level problem that the project addresses is twofold. One is we look at operational inefficiencies in smallholder supply chains. So the kinds of inefficiencies that we are interested in are things like market information, access to market information, inefficient routing and matching of farmers to middlemen, so transportation middlemen, a lack of income histories that exist in smallholder supply chains, and a lack of credit histories, and as a result, also a high reliance on cash-based transactions. The second problem that is very much related to this is often the challenges of transparency in the smallholder supply chains. And these two problems are linked very much to each other through the informal nature of smallholder supply chains and the fragmented nature of smallholder supply chains. This is a global phenomenon. This is a widespread challenge in agriculture in general. So according to the International Labour Organization, about 93% of agricultural employment in the world is informal. Compared to global employment more generally, that would be 61%. Now, the project that I'm working on here is especially focused on smallholder palm oil supply chains in Indonesia, jadi kelapa sawit. So why this project? So in Indonesia, the percent of agricultural employment that is informal is even higher. It's 99% as opposed to 93%. And Indonesia produces over 50% of global palm oil in the world. And much of that is produced by smallholder farmers. A bit more than half of the palm oil in Indonesia is produced by smallholder farmers, so petani sawit.
Yeah.
And so the other element is that the consequences of non-transparency are huge for also issues related to, for example, deforestation, and the operational inefficiencies are huge and affect the livelihoods of millions of smallholder farmers. We estimate there's between 3 and 4 million smallholder palm oil farmers in Indonesia. So the approach that we take is or the question that we ask in this research is, well, can we design mobile-based platforms to help deliver operational efficiency, transparency, and formality in smallholder supply chains at scale? So if we want to improve the livelihoods for between 3 to 5 million smallholder farmers, we need to find solutions that are scalable. So this is we're trying to see if we can use technology such as these mobile-based platforms to offer operational efficiency, transparency, and formality. And we think there's a huge role for technology because we have this fragmented nature and the informal nature, and so technology has the power to bring these guys together at scale. And so to address this question, we do a couple of different things. One is we collaborate with novel mobile-based platforms. Currently with PEMPEM, PT PEMPEM, for actors in informal smallholder supply chains that currently focused on palm oil. We're starting to look also in cacao in Riau province. We then combine the action learning through our collaborations on the ground with mathematical optimization and a method called mechanism design to develop platform algorithms and designs that improve economic efficiency. And so I'll make a note here that essentially, if we think about mobile-based platforms, it's not just software and IT. We need to actually be very careful about how we design the incentives in the platform, because people who are using the platform can be pretty strategic about about their interactions with the platform. And so depending on how you design it, the platform will thrive and be successful at achieving these goals. But if you design it poorly, then it could actually easily collapse. And so there are several examples of that. The next step then is that we test our proposed approaches in the mobile platform using field experiments. And then finally, the kind of win-win, if you will, or the complementarity here is that when people use a platform to improve economic decisions, then this helps digitize the transactions and it creates transparency as a byproduct. And so we believe that there's a complementarity between reducing inefficiencies and increasing transparency in these environments. So here are some examples of the research that we are doing. The first question that we looked at is this challenge of accessing market information. So it's a question of how do we design platforms to increase widespread access to market information in these supply chains. So if you're a smallholder farmer, how can you get access to better price information where to sell? Or if you're a transportation middleman, how can you get access to better information on buyers? In the past, much of the literature has assumed that this information is collected manually by a third party who would go out and survey different buyer locations to collect this data, and then they would disseminate it, for example, through a mobile platform. But if we want to increase access at large scale, then something like manually collecting the information isn't really feasible. So we need to think about a different approach. The approach that we're looking at right now is to crowdsource the information from people in the supply chain. So here's an example of some real life data from rural Indonesia. So on the left-hand side, I'm just going to abstract a little bit, but on the left-hand side, each dot that you can see here will be a firm, let's say a micro firm. So you can think about a transportation middleman in this case. And each dot on the right represents a buyer of palm fruit. And each link in between will essentially be will represent an information. So if you have a link between the first buyer and the first seller, it essentially, first buyer and first seller, it means that this seller receives information on prices from this buyer. The second link also, we have a seller who receives information from one buyer. The third link, we have a seller who receives information from 3 buyers. If you look across kind of a network of over 600 micro firms, meaning transportation middlemen in this supply chain, you would see that they actually receive access to information.
Can you slower? Can you speak slower?
Yeah, sure, sounds good. If you were to analyze the same, if you were to do the same analysis for, let's say, I think our data set right now is over 600 transportation middlemen on how many sources of information they get when they decide where to sell their information, they would receive access to information from about 2 buyers on average. Okay, this is through WhatsApp, through SMS. They use their mobile phones to be able to communicate, right? And they would receive access to 2 sources because they would know 2 sources. They would have an informal connection to about 2 buyers. However, if you look at the network, each of these sellers would be interested in probably selling to, on average, what we find is 7 buyers who are located approximately at the same distance as the ones they're currently selling to. These are very dense kind of buying, selling networks in rural Indonesia. And this is important. Why? Because if you then look at the data on prices and you consider just, let's say, the 7 buyers, and this is on average, but we're doing this analysis for individual sellers. If you're looking at the 7 buyers that a seller is interested in, and you look at the price differences that exist on a given day, then on average, there would be about 4% across time, across days and firms. And they would get up to 10% on a given day for up to 1 in 10 days. So there's a huge possibility to increase revenues in these smallholder supply chains if we can provide them with better access to market information. And so one of the research areas that we are working on is looking at, okay, how do we crowdsource this information from the supply chain and then bring it back to the supply chain? So here, if we were able to collect information from all of these 70 firms on all these 43 buyers, then now all of them would receive access to market information from 43 buyers as opposed to just 2. right? So how do we implement this at scale is one of the questions that we're looking at. The second question, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to talk more about kind of what is involved in that research. But a second question that we're looking at is then, well, okay, let's say that we can design a platform that is able to crowdsource this information, is able to increase access to market information for participants in smallholder supply chains. Now, can we then measure how effective this is? How much of an impact these mobile-based platforms have on actually increasing the profits, improving the decisions in smallholder supply chains, and providing better avenues for selling their products. And so in the past, work that has been done on this has been looking at what happens if you introduce mobile phones. So if you look at kind of a timeline, in the past, I could say 20 years ago, well, I guess even more, nearly 30 years ago, much of the communication in smallholder supply chains would be person to person. So you would have no mobile phones, and you would just communicate about market conditions person to person. Then the literature that's about a decade old would look at, okay, what happens if you introduce mobile phones, and now people can communicate kind of at large distances, one-on-one. They have an informal network of people that they speak with. They can get information through this informal network. What is the impact of introducing a mobile phone? And then the next step that we are looking at now is to say, okay, what happens if you introduce smartphones, that meaning that you have applications that people can now use to further improve their decisions beyond, and for example, in this case, they can get access to market information beyond just information from their informal channels, right? So now what happens if we can further increase the information sources that they have access to by going beyond just the people they can communicate with directly through SMS and WhatsApp? So what we find so far, by the way, but this is very preliminary, so I don't want to put it in here, but we find that increasing this access to market information in equilibrium would allow to increase, so for the people who are currently using this, they would increase their revenues by about 5% on average. And this would be statistically significant. So we're doing research really on measuring the effect of these new platform designs on the actual economic measures of interest for smallholders and the supply chains, smallholder supply chains. So then the next question that we're looking at is, okay, now we've looked at transparency and increased access to market information on the side of sellers, right? So sellers would receive access to more to market information from more buyers. Now, what does that mean for the buyer side, right? So do they also benefit? If we increase transparency in the market? And so in the past, much of the literature on this would suggest that transparency would result in the transfer of benefits. So it would result from the buyers who perhaps benefited from opaque markets to transferring welfare to the sellers who would now have a more transparent buying market. So much of the literature would suggest there's a transfer of welfare when you increase transparency. But actually, if you understand better the operational decisions that buyers face, for example, they face contracts in commodity supply chains. They face contracts with deadlines and penalties if they don't meet the contracts for certain quantities of oil. If you take into consideration these operational elements in their decision making, now suddenly it seems like there might be a benefit to transparency for the buyers as well. It's not a 100% relationship. So it's not that if you provide full transparency, it will always be the case that all buyers benefit. So there's kind of nuances in that that we're trying to understand in this stream of work. And then finally, moving on to something beyond information, because I mentioned information as one of the inefficiencies on my first slide, but there's many others. There are challenges with optimizing routing, optimizing the matching between farmers and middlemen. There's challenges with income histories and credit histories. So here's an example of what we do on the routing. So if we're thinking about optimizing the routing of, for example, transportation middlemen, or even being able to better match farmers with transportation middlemen, and the best estimate so far, based on the data that we do have, is that we would be able to reduce the transportation costs for middlemen by about 30% just by optimizing their roads, not even optimizing the matching. So that should be able to improve things even further. So there's potentially huge benefits from optimizing the transportation routes for middlemen. But the challenge that we face when we're trying to do this in practice is that there's very limited data on roads in rural Indonesia. So if you use Google Maps or OpenStreetMap in rural Indonesia, you will see lots of roads that are not on the map. And so what we use is we work instead with GPS trace data. So when trucks have GPS trackers, we can start using these GPS traces to try and see how we can fastly create the road network. Where do we install GPS trackers to learn as fast as possible, and how and then we try to predict road conditions based on weather conditions. So for example, if it has rain for 3 days and certain roads will be very hard to pass, and you wouldn't want to recommend a truck to pass by that road. And so we use GPS tracker data to understand the road conditions under different weather conditions to then be able to make better recommendations for routing in rural areas. So in the past, people typically would have assumed there was reliable Google Map data. And so now we're looking at, okay, how do we learn as quickly as possible in rural areas what the road networks look like and how it depends on weather data, for example, by using GPS trace data. So here's a picture of a collaboration. This is not in Indonesia, this is in Vietnam, where we have a lot of GPS trace data. We're working with the World Bank to try to understand how to extract this information as efficiently as possible. So there's lots of really interesting questions like that once you start working in rural Indonesia, I think, many challenges that we can try to overcome using technology in a smart way. So let me just conclude with a quick slide on some of the impact elements that we're hoping to have. So in the first step, we're looking at implementing the solutions on increasing access to market information through the PEMPEM platform in Indonesia. This platform currently reaches over 1,000 transportation middlemen, which are linked to over 40,000 smallholder farmers, and very preliminary results so that we can increase revenues by 5% on average through this simple mechanism. The second point is that there's this work on road recommendations that would be was inspired by work in Indonesia, but would really extend to other countries as well. And then finally, we hope to shed light using this research. We hope to shed light on reducing inefficiencies and the digital divide for other supply chains that are characterized by informal word-of-mouth coordination. So supply chains that rely on people that communicate purely through word of mouth. So some of the conversations that we're having are around cacao supply chains. So that's it for me. I think I'm going to close with what it looks like to be working with partners in Indonesia in 2019 versus 2020. Many thanks, and I'm available for questions if you'd like.
Right. Thank you, Prof. Sigar. This is very interesting, in fact, because I don't realize that you speak Indonesian. That's for first one. And then the second one is we in the Indonesian Academy of Science has been talking a lot about how to improve small holders, whether be it in the agriculture and other sectors. So you know, there is more than 200 registered, but usually they assume that we start late, you know, with 1 hour chatting and so on. So they don't realize that we have started really on time. So that's why the participant is growing slowly. That's what happened, you know, Indonesian, they usually delay and so on. So
I know.
I think this is a surprise that they don't know that we really start on time. I like being on time. So that's why the participant is not as much as what is registered. So the question and answer will be given later because we want to give all the speakers their time to share their presentation. Thank you so much. I will send this presentation to the member of the Indonesian Academy of Science, and there is also Pak Adi, so I'm glad that he's here. Thank you. And the next one is Prof. Retzef Levy. Yeah, Prof. Retzef Levy. Mada, can you? Yeah, yes. Yeah, Prof. Retzef Levy is a professor of operation management at the MIT Sloan School of Management. Now I can go slower because Prof. Seger is already given his presentation. I'm just worried about her time. And he's a member of the Operation Management Group at MIT Sloan and affiliated with the MIT Operation Research Center. He's a faculty co-director of the MIT Leaders for Global Operation. He focused on the design of analytical data-driven decision support models and tools addressing complex business and system design decision under uncertainty. And that's really good for Indonesia, which is very complex. And he has been leading several industry-based collaborative research efforts with some of the major academic hospitals in the Boston area. Currently, he leads a multi-year US-China collaborative efforts to develop new predictive risk analytics tools and testing technology and platform to address core food safety challenges in China, and funded by multi-million-dollar award from Walmart Foundation. He is the PI on an MIT contract with the Federal Drug Administration to develop systematic risk management approach to address risks related to economically motivated adulteration of food manufacture and global supply chain. And he also teaches regularly courses on operation management, analytic risk management, system thinking, and healthcare to students from various degree and non-degree. Now, I have time to Prof. Levy, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen, and I want to thank everybody for the organizers for the opportunity to be part of this event. It's unfortunate that I cannot be there in person, but hopefully in some at some future point in time we will be able to meet together. So today I'm going to talk about how food supply chain analytics can inform risks that emerge from food supply chains on public health. And this is something we've been working on in multiple geographies, including China, the US, and India, and other countries. I'm going to focus today on China, but just wanted to give a broader sense of what we are doing. And I think that when you think about the public health risks or risks on human health that emerge from food supply chains, there are at least 4 aspects that should be highlighted. The first one is the very basic need of every human for its well-being, to have access to healthy food. Unfortunately, food security is a global problem at the moment. And it's estimated that over 700 million people worldwide live in hunger at the moment. And if you actually think about access to healthy food, that's actually the number is bigger, and it's actually not a problem of only developing countries. Even in the US, there are tens of millions of people that live in food deserts in which they don't have access to healthy food. And that stands in strike contrast to the fact that when you consider food supply chains, there is a tremendous amount of waste throughout all the stages of the supply chain, from the farm level until the consumer level, and much of the food that is being produced at the moment is not being consumed even. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is food safety and adulteration. That's one of the major causes of illness and deaths every year. We are talking about 600 million cases of illnesses and over 400,000 deaths a year, many of which are young children and kids. So that's another major risk. Clearly, food and agriculture supply chains have major two-sided interactions with the environment. In particular, over 25% of the greenhouse emissions are originated from agriculture supply chains. And at the same time, the environment has a tremendous impact on productivity and safety in agriculture supply chains. And finally, and very timely, agriculture supply chains and food supply chains have been the origin of what is called zoonotic diseases. These are viruses that emerge from animals and jump into humans and have caused over the last several decades multiple global pandemics, the last of which is COVID-19, but that was preceded by SARS, avian and swine flu outbreaks and other pandemics. So that's another serious risk on human health that emerges from food and agriculture supply chains. And I'm going to focus today particularly on the risks related to food safety and adulteration and zoonotic diseases. And the common theme of the talk would be on how to leverage supply chain analytics and data combined with multidisciplinary field research to inform both global and local policy of regulatory policies around food supply chains and agriculture supply chains. The work in China is very unique, and I think its characteristics and similar to what Joanne described about her work is involving unique collaborations both within MIT. Within MIT, we have a large group of faculty, postdoctoral fellows, PhDs, and research scientists that span many disciplines and 3 schools of the university, the School of Management, the School of Engineering, and the School of Sciences. We have expertise in supply chain management, artificial intelligence and machine learning, regulatory science, food science, biomanufacturing, chemical engineering, and more. And even more excitingly, we are collaborating on the ground with 5 different organizations in China that have never been working together until this project. This includes universities, research institutes, and private companies. And as was mentioned already, this is funded by the Walmart Foundation through their Food Safety Collaboration Center in Beijing. I hear some echo. Is this just me hearing it or everybody hears it?
Oh, I don't hear echo, actually.
Okay.
You are very clear.
Okay, so I'm going to continue.
So I don't hear you as an echo, Recep, but I also had an echo problem when I was presenting.
Okay.
But I don't hear it as an audience. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to just continue and ignore that. So
Yes.
I don't hear you as an echo either, Resta.
Sure. So just to make the point of how much on the ground this project is, at least until very recently when COVID-19 at least eliminated the travel aspect of our work. We've been in China over the last 5 years, basically every 3 months. You see on the right-hand side here, this is research collaboration meeting with over 40 people between, again, scholars from the universities and the research institute and the companies together with us working on the project together. This is in the middle here. We participate in a conference in Shenzhen where the person here in the middle is the head of the China FDA in Shenzhen. This is on the bottom here. You see us in the field touring Wholesale markets in China. So let me set up a little bit the agenda of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to try to give you a sense of what this effort includes. It's going to be by no means a comprehensive exhaustive description of what we are doing, but hopefully will give you a flavor of what can be done. And I'm going to start with the issues related to data, because I think that one of the challenges in food supply chains is the lack of good integrated data. I think Joanne also alluded to that in her talk. Most data related to foods and agriculture supply chains is currently very fragmented, and it's not being integrated or not very easy to be collected.
Prof. Levy's voice.
You cannot hear me, or you can hear me?
No. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So data is a big challenge because it's very hard to integrate data and make it usable when it comes to food supply chains. And I basically want to try to show you how techniques like artificial intelligence and machine learning can be used at scale to create unique data sets that then can enable unique research. And that combined with field surveys and field data collection can lead to through a multidisciplinary research approach that use or leverages supply chain analytics and other disciplines to create not only academic outputs of papers, but also things that are have a major practical impact, including new regulatory strategies that are more risk-based, new risk predictive, new scoring schemes and predictive risk tools, visualization tools, and new management approaches to key parts of the food supply chain. So let me start with data. Maybe surprisingly, the China FDA that recently changed its name to the AMR is mandated by the law in China to post all the tests conducted across China on food products in the public domain. The challenge is that currently this data resides on hundreds of websites. And the reason is that in China, the regulatory environment is highly fragmented through the different provinces and the different prefecture cities in each province. So when you actually look on this data that is posted in the public domain, while there is a central CFDA website, there are also hundreds of provincial level and prefecture level website. Each is used to post the local tests conducted in the specific province or the specific prefecture, typically being kept and posted in completely unstructured manner and a completely inconsistent formats and templates. And that makes the data very hard to use in any systematic way. What we've been able to do over the last several years is, with a team of about 2 to 3 people, we were able to develop an automated process that is leveraging in a very extensive way machine learning and artificial intelligence techniques and tools to be able not only to scrape the data from most of these websites, but actually structure it into a harmonized, unified data set that currently includes over 5 million, close to 5 million records, covering all the provinces in China and most of the prefectures, and essentially being able to manage 75,000 files and 15,000 unique data table and structures. And this is, again, being done with a very small team with the power of artificial intelligence tools. So what I want to show next is how, once you are able to use these techniques to create a unique data set like this, what kind of research as well as policy insights you can derive. And I'm going to specifically focus today on the freshwater aquatic product supply chain in China. And what you see here is a relatively simplified diagram of this supply chain, starting with the farms on the left-hand side. And like Indonesia, most of the farms in China are household farms, very small farms. So you have millions of small farms that produce and grow aquatic products in small ponds. And that, from there, it goes through a network of brokers, either to manufacturers, but mostly to large wholesale markets that then distribute the supply into secondary and wet markets, and also to restaurants and retailer stores, and then to the consumer. Now, one of the things that we were asking ourselves is, when you think about adaptation and food safety issues in the supply chain, what are the sources of risk in the supply chain? The current priorities of the China FDA is to primarily test in retailer stores. so that's where most of the problems are detected. What we wanted to hello. What we wanted to ask ourselves is not where the problem is detected, but what is the supply chain source that introduced the risk. So, for example, if you have a product that was tested and was found to include residuals of illegal antibiotics, the likely source of the risk is the farm. On the other hand, if what was found is a preservative, the likely source is the manufacturer. And what we were able to do is at scale to look on all the test records that failed on aquatic products in any location in the supply chain and understand what the risk source of that, or what was the supply chain source of that particular adaptation was. And when you do the analysis, what you find is that about 8% of the risk comes from environmental factors, close to 40% of the risk comes from farming practices, and about 46% of the risk comes from manufacturing practices. And finally, the rest of the risk comes from circulation sources. And the first immediate insight that emerges from this analysis is that the current testing strategy of the China FDA primarily tests in downstream locations of the supply chain, but does not test close to the source of where the risk is. So that that already provides a major insight that could inform in very direct way what could be some improvement to the current resource allocation of regulatory testing of food products in China. The other thing that our analysis focused on is the supply chain location of wholesale markets. This is actually relatively unique to China and other developing countries. It typically does not exist in more developed countries. These are large distribution centers, and in fact, in China, there are about 5,000 large wholesale markets that consolidate about 80% of the supply of many product categories, including freshwater aquatic products, but not only, also things like produce, fruits and vegetables are follow the same pattern. And when you actually look on how much resources of tests are allocated to wholesale markets, you actually see that most of the testing is conducted, most of the tests are conducted in retailer stores, and just a small fraction of it is allocated to wholesale markets and secondary and wet markets. And this is very interesting because when you actually look on the flow of the supply in the supply chains, most of the supply that goes through the wholesale markets does not go to retailer stores, but actually arrives to the consumers through secondary and wet markets. And to complete this analysis, when you actually consider the failure rates in each one of these locations, and again, we can actually calculate all of these statistics based on the unique data set that we have, you actually see that the locations of wholesale markets and wet markets observe higher failure rate, significantly higher failure rate than retailer stores. And that leads to a very powerful insight that essentially there is an undersampling or undertesting of some of the most risky supply and risky supply chain locations within the supply chain that immediately could lead to improvements in the current policies. Now, wholesale markets in China and wet markets in China are not only known to be sources of food safety risks, but also are associated with many outbreaks of zoonotic diseases. Again, zoonotic diseases are diseases that emerge from wildlife or from animal agriculture and food supply chains. And unfortunately, we had more than a few examples over the last several decades, the last one being COVID-19, all of which were associated with wholesale and wet markets in China. So what we wanted to understand is whether we can develop a targeted risk scoring of wholesale markets in China, and specifically see whether there is a correlation between food supply chain risk, food safety risks, and zoonotic disease risks. And the challenge to do that is the following. If you want to get to a resolution of a specific market in China, then the data that you have at hand is very messy, in the sense that it's very hard to associate every test record with a specific market that was sourcing that food. So in order to do that, we had to actually apply advanced analytics and artificial intelligence-based clustering to be able to associate in a reliable manner each test records in the CFDA database that I told you about with a specific market in China. And then being able to do that, we were able to generate for each market in China a risk score that is based on the failure rate of all the tests that were conducted either on the market itself or on products that were sourced from that market. And then we were able to leverage these market level risk scores to a province level risk score that was basically capturing what is the fraction of supply in the province that is being sold through high risk markets. What is the value of this? So here is one thing that we created. This is actually a visualization tool of entire China, and it actually maps to you all the wholesales and wet markets in China with their respective risk scores. And it's in fact an interactive tool that is web-based interactive tool that allows you to actually get into each market here and see exactly what are the records of these markets are, what tests were conducted, how many failures, and so forth and so forth. Even more interestingly, when you actually look on the province level risk scores on the left-hand side here, and you compare them to the right-hand side, which captures the number of zoonotic flu cases identified in each one of the provinces. This is something that we were able to derive from a publicly available database called Open Flu, the Open Flu database. You actually see a correlation between the food safety risk scores that we created and the outcome measures that we measure with respect to zoonotic flu cases. And that suggests that there are potentially common system level environmental and management deficiencies in wholesale markets that drive not only food safety risk, but also zoonotic disease risks. And the implication is pretty dramatic if that's true, because when you think about how these two risks are being managed at the moment, they're being managed in a by very different organizations and are not being being thought and being considered as risks that are derived from the same sources of risk. We believe that this kind of an approach allows you to actually think about risk at a specific market, but also think more holistically and in a more integrated way about these two types of risks and develop strategies that can mitigate both. And just to make the point, we have been investing a very significant effort to understand wholesale markets in China. That includes a major field survey, perhaps the largest that was conducted in China in wholesale markets, aquatic wholesale markets in 3 provinces in China, Zhejiang, Guangdong, and Hunan province, where all the aquatic markets were surveyed, both vendors and managers. And we are currently working with a specific wholesale market in Zhejiang province to develop a new pilot that will essentially design and deploy a new digital management platform to help creating a better management system for the wholesale market, but also create a better use the wholesale markets and the fact that it's a very large consolidation point in the supply chain to create higher supply chain transparency. And one of the aspects that we are working on in that context, and Charlie that will follow me will talk about this more, is the ability to actually have superior testing capabilities that will allow you to test in a rapid and very accurate manner the food that goes through the wholesale markets. And that is pretty critical here, given the fact that the food in the wholesale markets can stay in the market for a couple of hours before it actually moves on. So that's a very exciting ongoing project that we are launching these days. And hopefully that would lead to some exciting new tools and new approaches to manage this critical supply chain location in China, specifically wholesale markets. Let me just end by making a point that many of the things that I was talking about are directly aligned with the priorities of the Chinese government. What you see here are two recent announcements of the government, of policy organizations within the government, that speaks directly about the need of risk analysis and supply chain management and risk-based food safety regulatory systems, and specifically about the need to have smart digital management of wholesale markets. So hopefully the work we are doing with collaborators on the ground in China will help inform these efforts in a very direct way. And by the way, my guess is that many of these aspects are relevant to other countries, perhaps even Indonesia as well. And so just a few last comments. I hope that you saw the potential of artificial intelligence and machine learning to actually create and enable new data and new integrated data on food supply chains and agriculture supply chains, and allow new supply chain analytics and risk visualization tools, and that ultimately can inform risk-based regulatory policies. Specifically, wholesale markets seems to be a critical supply chain location that has the opportunity to create higher supply chain transparency, but also mitigate two major risks that emerge from these locations, specifically food safety and zoonotic disease risks. Analytics has to be integrated with other technologies. And I think that the other thing that I would like to emphasize as a concluding comment is the fact that collaboration between academia, industry, and government, and between different countries is absolutely key. And as you can see, our team is very much seeking collaborations, and hopefully we can create similar ecosystem in Indonesia. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Prof. Levy. I think it's quite complicated for, maybe for most of us, but I hope there'll be a question to make it even clearer. Now, and it's very interesting because it is also connected to previous speaker, Prof. Ziga. The same difficulties and things like that we will ask to you later on. And the next presenter, without delay, I will give to Dr. Charles Swofford. Dr. Charles Swofford will give a presentation on engineered nanobodies for the rapid detection of antibiotics, and which is important part of the detection risk. So he is a PhD in chemical engineering from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Currently works as scientist at the Schains lab. And then his research ongoing is engineering single domain antibodies, or it's called nanobodies, for detections of illegal antibiotics and adulterants commonly found in food supply chains. Dr. Charlie, time is yours.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and good evening to my colleagues here in the United States. It's a real pleasure to be with you today. Let me quickly share my screen, make sure we can all see the slides. Can we see the slides?
Oh, yes. Well, very well.
Great. Yeah, so today I'm going to talk to you about the project I'm working on in the Schains lab. And this sort of ties into the previous speaker's talks. Our group is part of the FSAS Food Safety, Food Supply Chain Analytics and Sensing Initiative at MIT. And this title slide actually represents sort of the three thrusts of our project. And I will be talking specifically about the sensing technologies. As Recep described earlier, one of the really important aspects of monitoring supply chains is having rapid testing technologies that can quickly determine whether or not there are adulterants in the food that you may be monitoring. This talk is specifically going to focus on antibiotics, but could be more readily applied to other small molecules or larger molecules of interest that may be implicated in disease or contamination of food. So for those of you that are not familiar, the overuse of antibiotics does pose a global threat to the global food supply chain. At first glance, you may think to yourself that antibiotics are I'm sorry? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, Dr. Charlie. Sometime of the participant who just joined, their microphone is not off.
Oh, that's fine. I totally understand.
Yes. Let's go ahead.
Yeah. So, so for many of you, at first glance, you may think to yourself that antibiotics are a positive thing that we should be using in our food products in order to prevent pathogens from growing in our food. And that is all well and good, but one of the main problems is that over time, these bacteria become resistant, and then they can take over and grow, and we're unable to use those antibiotics any further. And when this happens, we can create multi-resistant pathogens. And at that point, we won't have antibiotics in order to treat these problems. The world right now only knows of a limited number of antibiotics. And so as we create these multi-resistant bacteria, it becomes that much more of a problem to treat them. And this is a global problem in many different countries. But since I'm speaking to an Indonesian audience, I just want to say that this is definitely a problem in Indonesia as well. Just as an example, last year in 2019, there was an analysis of 5 different traditional markets in Surabaya, and 93% of shrimp samples in Surabaya contained salmonella. And of those samples that contained salmonella, 100% of them were resistant to the erythromycin antibiotic, 12% were resistant to a tetracycline antibiotic. And the World Health Organization has identified Southeast Asia in general as a region most at risk for multi-resistant bacteria. So this is a major problem, and the main cause of this is that farmers tend to overuse antibiotics in order to keep their fish or food healthy. And so one of the major problems is what is the ability for us to detect these antibiotics in a quick and rapid manner so that we can make actionable items about, one of the main issues with testing right now is that it is slow and expensive. So most samples are, when you get them, are sent to third-party labs, and they use expensive equipment such as mass spectrometry in order to determine whether what antibiotics or other compounds are in the sample. This requires a long sample preparation time, and then once you get that result, it needs to be sent back to the farmer or to the regulatory agency to make an actionable, to take action against a potential contamination. So this is too slow because food moves rapidly in the supply chain, and so the solution to this would be to create rapid testing technologies, but there are problems with this as well. The current field tests that are out there lack quantitative measurements, so they cannot tell you how much of a adulterant or an antibiotic is in the sample. And usually there's only one test, and most tests can only test for one thing at a time. They're not able to test for a variety of antibiotics. One of the major problems that we've seen in our work in China, for example, is that many of the farmers or manufacturers that potentially do the adulteration of the food products, they're usually 1, 2, 5 steps ahead of the regulatory agency. So by the time that the regulatory agency catches on that they need to be detecting antibiotic A, the farmers are already using antibiotic B, and they're unable to find it in the supply chain. And so the current testing is costing time and money. And so one of the things that we want to solve is create this rapid testing technology. In order to do that, we need to create a way to specifically and sensitively detect these molecules. And the focus of this talk is going to be on using nanobodies in order to do this. Most of you may be familiar with traditional antibodies. This is the molecule on the left. These molecules are useful for binding to specific molecules. However, they're large, difficult to produce, difficult and expensive to produce. Nanobodies, on the other hand, provide unique capabilities that conventional antibodies do not. These molecules are much smaller in size, about the 1/10 of the size of a conventional antibody. They are more soluble in water. They are more stable at different temperatures. So they are stable up to 37 degrees Celsius, as well as 25 and 4 degrees Celsius, which makes them better for integrating into rapid testing technologies or distribution and supply chains where you may not be using the test for 3, 4, 5 months. And probably what's the best thing about nanobodies is that we can make them in bacteria. Since most antibodies are made using mammalian cell culture, it makes them rather difficult to make. If you can make an antibody, or in this case, a nanobody in bacteria, it greatly reduces the cost and it allows us to functionalize these nanobodies in specific ways that we can modify them to combine them with existing testing technologies. For example, we could combine them with nanotube optical sensors for rapid detection purposes. And I'll talk more a little bit about this at the end of the talk. Finally, recent studies have actually shown that because of these benefits, these nanobodies actually provide a much lower level of detection compared to traditional antibodies. Now, many of you may be wondering, okay, well, where do these nanobodies come from? And they only come from a few number of species on the planet, specifically camelids, so llamas, camels, and alpacas. And so we decided that we wanted to set out to see, could we make a nanobody against an antibiotic? And could we use this in a testing technology? And to start this project, we decided to target 3 different antibiotics of very different classes: chloramphenicol, semicarbazide, and enrofloxacin. All 3 of these have been implicated in antibiotic use in food supply chains. And they all have 3 very different mechanisms of action, meaning that they affect how the bacteria respond to them differently. And because we didn't know which one of these molecules would be best, we decided to combine all 3 of these into one cocktail and determine which one would be the best at producing a nanobody. And so the way that we did this was we injected all 3 of these into a llama, and we waited for the llama to produce antibodies or nanobodies against these molecules. What you're looking at here on the left, and I'm going to try to make the science, I know some of the audience here is not technical, so I'll try to make it as simple as possible. So we injected these 3 molecules into a llama, and after 30 days, we determined whether or not the llama showed any response to these molecules, whether there was an increase in the number of antibodies against that molecule. And what we noticed was in the serum of this llama after day 30, we saw a substantial increase in the titer, or the number of antibodies against chloramphenicol, and this was maintained at day 50. We also saw a slight increase with enrofloxacin and semicarbazide as well. But due to the really high titer at chloramphenicol, we decided to focus on this as a pilot study to determine whether or not we could get this technology to work. And so the way that you go about doing this is, as I described, is you inject this antibiotic into a llama, and then at the end of the study, we need to be able to collect all the antibodies that this llama produced, and then filter out and find the nanobodies that are specific to the target we're looking for. And so the way that we do that is we remove the buffy coat or the plasma from the llama, and we isolate all the RNA from that region. And this RNA contains all the coded information for all the nanobodies that this llama may have produced. We convert that to DNA, and then we use a technique called PCR to amplify only the DNA that are specific to antibodies. We insert that back into bacteria and then express these nanobody DNAs on phage particles or virus particles. And so once we do that, we have this library at which we can find nanobodies that are specific to our target of interest. And then we run a technique called phage display to see if we can find nanobodies that are specific to our target. So the way that this works is, let's say we have a library here where we had in one case a phage particle that had a chloramphenicol specific nanobody attached to it, since it's the molecule we're looking for. And we also have a phage particle with a nanobody that is not specific to the phage particle, or it's not specific to chloramphenicol. We can coat a plate with chloramphenicol on the bottom. We throw our library in, and only the phage particles that are specific to the molecule of interest we're looking for will stick to the plate. We can then wash the plate, remove all the unspecific nanobodies, and then finally collect these phage particles that are remaining and infect them with E. coli. And what happens is you can then grow them. I won't go into the details, but essentially each one of these E. coli colonies on this plate represents a single nanobody after doing this screening and filtering procedure. The negative control in this case, you can see, does not have any colonies. There's no little spots here, and that's because the negative control, we didn't coat any chloramphenicol to the plate. And so there was nothing. So if there was no chloramphenicol here, all the nanobodies were not able to bind to anything, and they were all washed away. Okay. So, sorry. So now that we have reduced our library down to only nanobodies that are specific to chloramphenicol, we now screen them to see which are our best binders. And the way that we do that is we run a classic technique called an ELISA. The way that we do this is we coat chloramphenicol once again to a plate, and then we add into each of these wells one individual nanobody, and we add another molecule that gives a signal that we can measure quantitatively. And so what you're looking at here is basically a screen on this little well plate where there's 96 wells here. So these are 96 individual candidates. And the amount of yellow that's coming off of here basically indicates to you how well does this bind to my molecule of interest. And so we can rank all of these by their absorbance measurement, or quantitatively which one was the brightest. And so, you know, we took some of our top hits and looked at them further. So you can see here, this well that was at B2 was our #1 hit. And our well at D1 was our #2 best hit. So let's look at #1 more closely. You know, this was a rough screen, but the best way in my field to determine how well a nanobody binds to your molecule is to run a procedure called isothermal calorimetry. This, I won't go into the details of the experiment, but this process allows you to calculate all the necessary binding kinetics that are necessary to determine what's called a dissociation constant. And this number is essentially an indicator of what is your binding affinity to your molecule. And it's a little counterintuitive. The smaller the dissociation constant, the more tightly it binds to the molecule. And you can see our top hit, which I'm calling B2 here, has a dissociation constant of about 1 micromolar to chloramphenicol. And it also binds just as well to 2 other chloramphenicol analogs that we didn't test, that we didn't screen for initially, fluorphenicol and thiophenicol. Now, a 1 micromolar binder, for those of you that are not familiar with this, is not a great binder. And so we decided to screen our second best hit. Does this one work any better than the first one that we had? And this one I'm calling D1. And you can see, like I said, the lower the number, the better the binder. D1 showed a much better affinity to chloramphenicol than the initial nanobody that we looked for. In fact, it reduced it down from 1 micromolar down to 100 nanomolar. So that's a 10-fold better binder than our initial candidate. It also was able to show some distinction between fluorphenicol and thiophenicol as well. But they did bind to all 3. That being said, this could still be a good nanobody because you may want to have something that binds to all these different molecules, since when you're doing regulatory work, you may be looking for all 3 of these at once. Okay, but what we wanted to finally figure out was, you know, what is the reason why this nanobody doesn't bind as well as this nanobody? And so the way that we did that is we worked with a group at MIT to get the crystal structure of our nanobodies. And what you're looking at here, this is the first crystal structure of an antibody or a nanobody against chloramphenicol. On the left here, we used a technique called X-ray diffraction to get the actual structure of the protein. and you can see the chloramphenicol molecule bound here in the product, and their D1 nanobody is the same nanobody, and what I've highlighted in red here are the changes in the structure between these two nanobodies. And you can see this is a 3D structure, but what was most important, you know, other than the fact this is a nice pretty picture, was looking more closely at how this chloramphenicol molecule bound to the nanobody. And we identified using this structure a key residue, which I've highlighted here in magenta, that in the B2 nanobody, as you can see, I don't need to go into the details, I think you can see visually, it doesn't really bind to chloramphenicol as well here compared to the D1 nanobody. So this was a one amino acid, so amino acid is an individual component of a protein. A one amino acid change made a 10-fold difference in this nanobody. And so we thought to ourselves, what if we took this mutation and we put it back into our original nanobody? Would that make this entire structure better than it originally was? So we did that, and we reran our experiment, and we got a fantastic result. So we took our initial nanobody, and I should also say this was easy to do because it's a nanobody and we can do this in E. coli. The techniques are much easier to run than doing traditional antibodies. We made a 1 amino acid mutation, and we improved the binding by 20-fold, from 1 micromolar down to 50 nanomolar. This also improved the binding from this D1 nanobody by 2-fold. And you can also see we have tight binding to fluorophenicol, and we have a slightly less binding to thiamphenicol. But I would say by far, this nanobody was our best and is in a really tight binding range for chloramphenicol. And so now we have this great recognition element that we can use with other sensing strategies to bind to our molecule of interest. So quickly, I'm going to talk about maybe some applications that we could use with this, and the thoughts that we're and the strategies we're using to work towards creating a rapid testing technology. And one of the first ones we're thinking of is a more simplistic approach, which is the lateral flow assay. You may more commonly think of this as a home pregnancy test kit. So this is what you're looking at here on the left. Essentially what this is you take your food sample, you would add it here into the sample port, like I have here on this diagram, and then through capillary action, this liquid flows across this pad, and I would have attached here this new anti-chloramphenicol nanobody, and essentially what this would do is create a test strip, just like here, except a little bit backwards, where in this case, if there is no chloramphenicol present, so minus, the chloramphenicol nanobodies could bind to this test strip where there's already chloramphenicol on the strip. But if there's chloramphenicol in the sample, it will bind to the nanobodies, blocking the binding site, and they will be unable to bind to this test strip. And so in this case, if you have a positive case of chloramphenicol, then the test strip doesn't light up. It's a little bit backwards in the pregnancy test kit, but the idea is the same. So this is a great first approach, but there are some issues with this. One, as I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, this is not, at least currently, a multiplexable platform, meaning we can't test for multiple antibiotics on this platform. And two, this is probably not very quantitative. And if you want to test for something where, you know, the regulatory agency says that as long as you're above, 50 parts per million, you're fine, this product probably won't be able to tell you if you're above or below that. It'll just tell you, is it there or is it not? So the other project that the other idea that we're working on is in collaboration with the Strano group at MIT in chemical engineering, and that's creating a multiplex optical array. And the way that we do that and what we're working on is attaching these nanobodies to carbon nanotubes. And these carbon nanotubes are fluoresce in the near infrared. And so they can be excited with visible light. And what happens is upon binding of an analyte of interest that you're looking for, let's say chloramphenicol, there's an intensity change or a wavelength shift that you can monitor and you can quantify, and that will allow you to determine if that sample is present. And this is real-time detection. So when this happens, when chloramphenicol is present, this happens in a matter of seconds. So it's a great rapid testing technology. And what's finally great about it is we can take these carbon nanotubes and we can multiplex them. So you can put these on a glass slide or a piece of paper in individual little spots. And each of these spots can be a nanobody sensor that is specific to a different adulterant of interest. And so we're very excited about this technology, and we're still working on the kinks for this, but we're hoping that this could be a way to move forward. Another exciting thing about this optical system is that there are many different ways you can run this. You can use more expensive equipment with lasers to do this analysis, but you can also use something as simple as a cell phone camera to do this analysis. So it could be something that's more portable and handheld that the general public could use. The only challenge right now with a cell phone camera is you would need to be able to detect in the near infrared, and there's an IR filter on your cell phone cameras currently. So that would still need to be worked out. And so the future directions of this project, like I said, is to develop these rapid testing technologies using these nanobodies. But we also want to expand our library of nanobodies to include not only antibiotics, but maybe of interest to my Indonesian colleagues, pesticides, allergens, pathogens. So we can also use this to detect Salmonella or E. coli themselves. And finally, we can also use it to detect viruses such as COVID-19 or SARS or avian flu, et cetera. Actually, there was some recent papers that came out that discovered new nanobodies that can bind to the COVID-19 virus. So it's very exciting work and an exciting time to work in this field. And so with that, I just want to thank the Sinsky Lab, and I want to thank my advisor, Tony Sinsky, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I have some great collaborators within the lab that have helped me with this project. I really want to thank the Schwartz Lab for helping me with the crystallography work. I want to thank all the team at the food safety, at the FSAS initiative, Stacy, Retzef, and Lou, among others, and Lampire Biological Laboratories, which is a company that allowed us to do, that ran the llama work for us initially. And so I want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Charlie. It's very interesting presentation. I hope there'll be many questions because this is fairly new, and maybe there'll be questions also from student and colleague from biology department, which I have informed regarding this nanobodies development. Thank you, and well presented. Now, for the next keynote speaker, I'd like to invite Prof. Hello. For the next presenter, I'd like to invite Prof. Pur. Yes. Yeah. Prof. Purwiyatno Haryadi. He'll be presenting strengthening the safety system and regulation in Indonesia. He's professor at the Department of Science and Technology, IPB University, now the names. Senior scientist at the Southeast Asian Food and Agricultural Science and Technology, IPB University. He is a vice chair of Codex Alimentaris Commission, joint FAO and WHO Food Standard Program Rome, and fellow of the Academy of Food Science and Nutrition, Indonesian Academy of Science, and fellow of the International Academy of Science and Technology. The time is yours, Prof. Pur. Is Prof. Pur here? Prof. Pur? Are you here?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, are you
Can
here?
you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
It's your time now. You can share your screen.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Yes, I can hear echo here when I'm speaking. So I'm sorry for that. So, okay.
There is notification that your bandwidth is a bit low, but I can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, let me share my screen.
Yes, it displays well.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, I would like to say thank you for this opportunity, and also like to congratulate Professor Retno and the team for organizing a very important event. And today I would like to share some of my thoughts regarding the strengthening food safety system in Indonesia. So this is rather macro as compared to the previous speaker. So hopefully I will give you some big picture about how the food safety system works in Indonesia. We have several laws regarding food in Indonesia. The main one is the law number 18, 2012 on food. This is very important one. Actually, this is replacing the old law that we have on food law, law number 7, 1996. And besides that, we have also several related law associated with food. First one is law on health. Also, we have law on consumer protection. And lastly, law on halal product assurance. So this is very important one because Indonesia has mainly the population is are Muslim. So when we refer to the food law, law number 18, 2012, this law very much gave a mandate to the government of Indonesia to institutionalize food sovereignty, food self-sufficiency, and also food security. So this is very important one. If you check the law, if you read the law, so there are three main definitions about food security, food self-sufficiency, and also food sovereignty. And politically, this is very heavy in Indonesia, especially for the food sovereignty. So many discussions associated with food safety aspect and also other related food aspect is becoming political sometimes. But anyway, this food law provides legal basis for government of Indonesia to regulate some of the following aspects. Yeah, food planning, food availability, food affordability, nutrition and consumption, and food safety, and many others. So today, I think our focus is on food safety. And according to the law number 18, 2012, food safety is defined rather lengthy here, but very important to for us to understand because it's very unique definition in terms of food safety as compared to the definition of food safety from other countries, for example. So in this law, food safety is defined as a condition and necessary effort to prevent food contamination, whether from biological, chemical, or other agents that can potentially harm or endanger human health. But it will certainly not end there. We also have the second definition of the food safety, that the food safety is also associated effort and condition to ensure that food does not conflict with religion, belief, and culture of the community. So this is the second part, is also very important, so that the food is safe for consumption. Okay, so this is the basis when in Indonesia people discussing about food safety. Again, this is from the legal or law perspective. And this is when the halal of product assurance law, law number 33, 2014, become very important when we are talking about food safety because of the second part of the definition of the food safety itself. So we are talking about the halal food in this case, for example, just example, because religion is not is very broad. So, but for the majority of Indonesian population, halal food is very important. And just to give you some information, actually the law of halal law, sometimes it's called, requires that all products that meet the halal requirement and enter, circulated or sold within the Indonesia need to be labeled halal, need to be halal certified. So this is the requirement. But currently this provision is postponed, at least probably until 2014 or maybe later on. Mr. Adi, Pak Adi will explain, because we just recently have the new law that probably modify in a way the status of this particular halal law. And currently, government has already established Halal Product Assurance Agency, or Badan Penyelenggara Jaminan Produk Halal. This is under the Ministry of Religious Affairs. So this just give you a flavor about how Indonesia will try to manage the food safety aspect. But in principle, I would like to say that food safety in Indonesia is increasingly more and more important. Has been viewed as a critical aspect of food, and many government agencies are actively involved in food safety management system. Indonesia have increased their attention to food safety because of several reasons, obviously. This is associated directly with food security, because the food has to be safe. This is first thing first. So when Indonesia would like to improve the food security, then there is no other choice that food safety has to be tackled as well. And then also food safety related closely with the public health, and this is in terms of the domestic affair, but also in the international affair, food safety aspect is one requirement for the trade competitiveness, especially in the international food trade arena. So obviously, we can see that there is a need to develop more relevant, more implementable and updated food legislation in Indonesia. Just recently, actually, last year, the government has issued the government regulation number 69 regarding food safety. So this is the basis for Indonesia to have a management of food safety system, actually. And the objective has been stated at the government regulation and also at the law of food law number 18 of 2012, that the food safety system objective of Indonesia is to provide protection to the health of the people. So at the end of the day, providing food safety and also associated with the definition of food security is to assure that any individual in Indonesia will be able to live healthy and active life. So this is very important. And in order to do that, I think we need to manage food safety along the food supply chain, because the supply of safe and nutritious food will always come at the beginning from the farming here. Okay, so from the farming, plantation, animal production, fishing, and so on, and then go to the food supply chain from harvest, post-harvest, processing, transportation, distribution, marketing, and then finally go to the household. So this is very important to manage how the food safety is supplied from the other end here to the other end at the household level. This is the challenge. Another challenge that this challenge has been addressed at the government regulation number 69, involving so many, I will say again, so many agencies. So the term usually used is that the food safety system in Indonesia is managed by a multi-agency or multi-food safety competent authorities. So many of them. Okay, just to illustrate, when we are talking about at the start of the production side, for example, at agriculture, or farming, or fishing, for example, The provision or the regulation is developed by several ministry, primary ministry, basically, like good agricultural practices is developed by Ministry of Agriculture. Good hygienic practices is developed by Ministry of Agriculture as well, and also Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fishery. And also good harvesting, good handling is also developed by this ministry, basically. And when we come to the processing side of the supply food chain, then good manufacturing practices, for example, has been established by National Agency of Drug and Food Control, established by Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fishery, Ministry of Industry, Ministry of Religious Affairs, in fact, because we also concerned about halal, and also regional government, depending on the scale of the industry itself, and also National Standard Agency. So there are, again, multiple agency involved. At the distribution and also marketing side, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Religious Affairs, and also Ministry of and regional government, I mean, is also involved in that. It's depending again what kind of product and also what how big is the scale of the industry itself. So basically, we have so many agencies, and we talk about what agency is responsible for this kind of food. Then we need to ask ourselves, okay, in what state of processing this food you are talking about, okay? Because depending on the state of processing, several or different agencies may be responsible, and also what type of food is that? Food related with fish and fishery product, for example, or related with seed and cereal, for example, will be managed by different agency. And also, how about the scale of the business? Is that small, medium, or micro, or big industry? So this is our situation now, and specific provision and regulation for that particular food is managed by different related agencies. So this is our challenge. The same situation is also actually we can see happening when we're dealing with international standards. So the management of contact related work, for example, is also managed by so many agencies. But we're rather lucky in this case because the situation is rather, well, I'll say rather, coordinated. So this is the way in Indonesia manage the regulation of food associated with the international environment. So, for example, if we're talking about the fish and fishery product, obviously the ministry who are responsible for that is Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries. And then if we're talking about contact work related with hygiene, for example, the ministry who is responsible for that is Ministry of Health. And then we're not talking about the food additive, contaminant of food, food labeling, nutrition. Then the responsible agency is National Agency of Drug and Food Control, BPOM. Okay, so there are so many of them. And I said that we are rather lucky in this case because we have agreed that all of this work related to contact work, for example, are coordinated by the National Agency, National Standardization Agency. So the National Standardization Agency is over here, managing what we call as the Indonesian National Codex Committee, and Pak Adi is one of the members of that. So again, there is a mechanism trying to put in place, trying to manage or trying to consolidate the Indonesian position coming from a different agency on specific issues here before going to Codex Forum, for example. Again, so just to show you the complication that we have in dealing with coordination. So when we're talking about the food safety system, actually, in my opinion, we are talking about the national food control system covering the domestic food supply chain, It's supposed to be integrated system over there, and also a global value chain. So this is our challenge actually, and the complication I just illustrated before is apparent. In my opinion, currently there is no clear or definitive national coordinator for that, and every government agency has their own authority. Not only that, their own program, and also they have their own budget. So they don't talk so much with each other. The coordination is very easy to say, but very difficult to do. So this is the question. So the big question is, when we're talking about the strengthening, is how can we use the government regulation number 69, 2019, to integrate a food safety related program among many, and in fact, in my opinion, too many, related government agency and other stakeholders as well, like industry, and then NGO, and so on. That's the big issues in Indonesia, in my opinion. Okay, but nevertheless, we need to find a way to strengthen that, because food safety is very important, and also in the international arena related to food trade is very important. According to the guideline for strengthening national food control system, this is published by FAO WHO, there are several building blocks of national food control system. Number one is food law and regulation. I think we have plenty. Probably some of them are over-regulated, actually, in my opinion. And then number two, B, food control management. It's still scattered, in my opinion, and involving so many multiple agencies. Then inspection system. Many government don't have inspection system in an equal basis. I mean, in my opinion, the National Agency of Drug and Food Control have rather expensive inspection services, but some of the ministry, for example, Ministry of Agriculture is lagging behind, and Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fishery has a very good one, in my opinion. So it's not distributed very well because of the different state of development. Laboratory services is also scattered still, and also information, education, and communication. This is very important, especially if we would like to develop food safety culture in Indonesia. This is very interesting. This is a result of the study done by FAO and WHO, specifically assessing the performance of national food control system in Indonesia. They have a mechanism and trying to assess several components, this component in Indonesia. And there are several conclusions, but the interesting one is that the study mentioned that many food safety initiatives actually has been created, many activities, many programs, and also regulatory, but many of them are sectoral. This is what I call, everybody have their own program, and also they have their own budget. Okay, the coordination needs to be strengthened, obviously, and both in terms of regulation and also in practice in the field. And especially in Indonesia, communication between central government to local government is very important, because we have a deregulation system. And actually it's been done, but there is a little feedback from the regional government. So regional government do their own business, basically. So that overall, there are so many programs, but the impact is limited. And also the data regarding the food safety status of food safety is lacking. So this is very, very concerning, actually. Okay. And if we refer to the one of the document on principle and guideline for the national food control system, the objective of the system as a whole is actually twofold. Number one is to protect the health of consumer, and number two, at the same time, is to ensure fair practices in the food trade. So this is very important one. And in my opinion, this is the last part of my presentation, the strengthening part. point to be strengthened, understanding the condition that we have, as I mentioned before. Number one is that now everywhere there is a trend of shifting in terms of who are the primary responsibility of food safety, from the government to the business operator establishment or food establishment. So this is very important. In principle, I will say that a business operator are responsible for producing a safe food, and what it is says it is, and this is from the food business operator point of view, and they should be able to demonstrate that they have to do so. So if they have some kind of claim, for example, then they have to be responsible, and they have to be able to show that their claims are correct. So this is the principle. So at the same time, consumers have the right to information to help them make informed choices about the food safety they buy. Yeah. So that business has the responsibility to be transparent and honest in their provision of that information. Again, meaning that the primary responsibility of food safety is on the food business operator. So this is what I mean by, government needs to also think to shift the pre-market approval system to post-market surveillance approach. Now, I think the government is heavily still rely on the pre-market approval. So, but once it is approved, how they perform in the market is not very well surveilled. So this is one of the things that need to be strengthened. And the regulator, the government in this case, should take into account all available source of information, including information created and provided by the third-party assurance system. There are so many third-party assurance system available in Indonesia, especially if, coming from different agencies, and they create a lot of information and data regarding the food safety, and the government should also use that as a way to improve the food safety system in Indonesia. Number two, the whole food chain approach, and also the need to improve the cooperation and coordination between multiple competent authorities in food safety. We know that food safety is a shared responsibility, and overall outcome of food safety is very much determined by the weakest link in the supply chain, in the food supply chain. Then the building of food safety infrastructure in Indonesia is very important, because there are so many conditions where food safety infrastructure is lacking, and also develop inspection system along the food supply chain, not only to ensure food safety, but more importantly is to educate or to assure, develop food safety culture at the food supply chain. So this is very important. And in order to do that, development of massive food safety education program to all actors in the food supply chain is also very important. In addition, I think all government agencies need to be reminded that only with a coordinated and concerted effort between government, food authorities, and also industry or business, and also consumer and other stakeholders, the national and international level, then the assurance of product or food safety in this case and quality can be achieved. So this is a requirement. The coordination is very important, because if you regulate at the other end and you have a different regulation at the other end, and you will end up with confusing situation, especially for the food business operator. The third one, this is very important for us, is especially at the university and also at research institution, the need to strengthen the risk analysis system in Indonesia, including the risk assessment, risk management, and risk communication. considering the huge number of variety of food produced and marketed in Indonesia, then it is necessary for the government of Indonesia to do risk profiling and risk ranking and develop a priority program based on their risk, on food risk. Food classified as a high-risk food should receive more attention in terms of the risk management and including regulation as compared to the lower risk food. So government of Indonesia should develop risk-based evaluation, risk-based inspection, and also risk-based regulation. This is very important. And speaking about the risk-based regulation, method of regulatory impact analysis, for example, should be developed and used to ensure that the regulation developed for food safety in Indonesia is not only effective, meaning achieve the food safety objective, but also efficient, meaning achieve the food objective at the lowest possible cost to all members of the society. So this is a very, very important approach. Next is on the need to emphasize more on prevention or preventive measure. We know that ensuring food safety, it is very important to build food safety culture, especially emphasizing the preventive measure aspect for all of the actors involved in the food business operator from farm to table. In addition to that, there's also need to develop aspect of food defense, meaning, something dealing with intentional adulteration, for example, or economic motivated adulteration, things that food fraud, things that has been identified as an increasing incident, especially during this time of pandemic, unfortunately. So prevention aspect is very important. And lastly, one of the objective of the national food control system is also to improve the competitiveness of their product in the fair international food trade. Indonesia needs to develop program to improve the food safety, because food safety is an essential component of the competitiveness of its product, especially for the exported food product in the international food trade. So this is very important for Indonesia to put Indonesia as an essential component of the global food supply chain. Indonesia needs to actively and effectively participate in the international fora, especially in the Codex Alimentarius Commission, for example. It must be realized that food safety is a shared responsibility, and food safety problem can only be solved using farm-to-fork approach. So at the international setting, every country involved at the international food trade must be reminded that the farm side of the food production may be in country A, and the fork side of the food production may be in other country B or C, meaning that the understanding and collaboration between a producing and exporting country is essential to assure and to strengthen global food supply chain. So this is a very important one in the arena of food international food trade. And lastly, I'm sorry, this is in Bahasa Indonesia, but I took this from the recommendation given by the National Workshop of Food and Nutrition in 2018. I think they gave a good recommendation. Number one is to strengthen the national food control system here, as I mentioned before. And in addition to that, the workshop also recommend to strengthen the research and development, especially including the development of human resources in area of food and quality, and also strengthening the regulation, as I mentioned before, especially using the regulatory impact assessment methodology and others. And also strengthening the empowerment aspect, the education aspect, especially to the small and medium businesses. And lastly, but not least, obviously, is to strengthen the information, the education aspect related to food safety to improve or to build a better food safety culture. Okay, so So the question for us is what kind of technology? Is there any technology solution? The presentation that I witnessed today previously provide many alternatives from the technology aspect to provide solution for us, and also what kind of research is needed. So with that, I will end my presentation, and hopefully it will generate some research question and topic for the betterment of our food safety and also food safety system in Indonesia. I thank you very much and looking forward for very productive discussion. I will end my presentation here, and thank you very much, Professor Retno.
Thank you, Prof. Purwiatno. It's really comprehensive presentation covering regulation in Indonesia and food safety in the food safety system. I hope our partners, other speakers will have an overview of how complicated it is, and so that's why I keep saying that it's easier to do it by a commodity approach when they want to understand it, so we can have a smaller scope rather than for the whole commodities. Thank you, Prof. Purwiatno, for your presentation. The next one will be Mr. Adi Lukman. Mr. Adi Lukman?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Adi Lukman, he will give a title, Ensuring Food Safety in Food Supply Chain Industry in Indonesia, Roles and Lessons Learned from Indonesian Food and Beverage Industry. And because he is the chairman of GAPMI for a long time, the Indonesian Food and Beverage Association, he's also chairman of Permanent Committee for Development of Food Industry in Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, known as KADIN, member of Working Indonesia's National Productivity Board, member of Expert Working Group of National Food Security Council, member of National Codex Committee, the Executive Board of AFBA, Asian Food and Beverage Alliance, the honorary member of the Academy of Food Science and Nutrition, the Indonesian Academy of Science from the business, business enterprise. So welcome. Mr. Adi, I give the time for your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Retno, and also thank you for Universitas Diponegoro and MIT for this collaboration, for inviting me to share about the ensuring the food safety and the food supply chain in
food and beverage industry.
Food and beverage industry. Okay, thank you. And I got the assignment from Prof. Pur that shifting the responsibility to the business operators. This is a big challenges for us to do this. And also I like the presentation from Prof. Levy, the lesson learned from the China food safety. The keywords is database and collaboration. This is also present by Prof. Purwiatno. Okay, let me share my presentation. Can you see?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, thank you.
Well.
Thank you. As requested by the Prof. Retno, that I ensuring the food safety and the food supply chain industry in Indonesia. If we talk about the food safety and the food supply chain industry in Indonesia, we have to see in a global F&B industry in Indonesia. We know that Indonesia is a big country, and geographical. You see the many islands in Indonesia, and also the important thing is the expenditure per capita for food is almost 50% in Indonesia. So that's why the food and beverage industry is one of the important industry sector in Indonesia. And you can see also the special added value of the food and beverage industry spread all many islands, and the most contribution is coming from Java Islands, and then the second is from Sumatra Islands. So this is challenging in conducting the post-market surveillance due to the geographical factors, as mentioned by Propo, that multi-stakeholders should take responsibility for the food safety in Indonesia. This is just information from the number of establishment of the food and beverage industry in Indonesia. The most number is coming from the small and medium enterprises. So that's why the challenges for the SMEs to comply with the food safety standards. Even actually not all SMEs, but most SMEs lack of the capital to comply with the food safety standard or even GMP requirements. Lack of experience and knowledge, lack of access to information, lack of awareness, and also lack of adequate resources like water resources, sanitation, and others. And the important thing is awareness and willingness to implement the food safety standard in the industries. So this is just information that Indonesia also investment in food and beverage industry always growing from time to time. And fortunately, during the pandemic COVID-19, the investment still growing from the foreign direct investments, almost 15%. And Indonesia has a vision for 2045, which is Indonesia 100 years, that the GDP per capita will become $23,000. And currently, our GDP is around 4,000 something. So this is a big opportunity, for the food and beverage industry. And unfortunately, during the pandemic COVID-19, the household consumption is contraction, -4% in the third quarter. But fortunately, food and beverage industry is still growing, 0.6 in the third quarter. And contribution also increasing from time to time. Currently, it's around 39% to the GDP non-oil industry sectors. So that's why the food industry plays an important role in food availability and contributes to the economy. During the pandemic, of course, some impact of the COVID-19 to the food and beverage industry. And this is very important that the food safety is as a center of attention during the pandemic-19, because some shifting happened in the consumers' awareness, that many consumers more aware about the food safety, especially in the production and also in the distribution and consumptions. So that's why our food and beverage industry have to adapt the new shifting, the new from the consumers. So we have to implement the food safety management more, and also to implement the human-machine interface in the industry. Because some shifting in the consumers, like food safety in the sales channels, and also the awareness of the consumers about food safety, as I mentioned previously. And to do that, the government has some guideline for a new normal in the food and beverage industry from the National Agency for Food and Drug Control, and also from the Ministry of Industry, Ministry of Health, and also our associations, GAPMI, collaboration with the Ministry of Industry, release a new normal F&B industry guideline. This is very important for us to build a public trust in the food safety, and also to implement the food safety system and health protocol during the pandemic COVID-19. And this is just information about the export-import in the food and beverage industries. Our food and beverage industry contribute quite significant, around 22% to the total export in Indonesia. So that's why the food safety system to ensure the food safety system is important to build a trust to our buyer in the destination countries. This is just info that our exports still increased during the pandemic 19. And this is the challenges along the food supply chains. And one of the challenges is the food safety. And you know, for example, so many detained without physical examination in the USFDA. This is just a sample. So that's why the food safety system is very important to be implemented in our food and beverage industry to avoid these detentions. And how to ensure the food safety? We understand this is in the Mandarin character. This is the food characters. If parts of the food character is good, and the other part is a human. So that's why the food is good for humans, and to make it safe, quality, nutritious, and value, and also good for health. So that's why this is very important for business operator in the food and beverage industry to understand that the food must be good for human consumption, including the safe. And also the World Health Organization also mentioned that the key to sustaining life and promoting good health is safe and nutritious food is a key to sustaining life and promoting good health. And this is very important to avoid the costs of the food recall, because the food recall is unsafe product will become economic losses, and also impact to the public health and also the company reputation and untrusted. So that's why it's very important we have to implement the food safety system. I like this from the Prof. Purwiyatno that safety as a psychological and physiological safety is a prerequisite of food value. So that's why this is very important we implement in the food and beverage industry, and to build a reputable brand in the market also as the product values. And this is just information as a psychological safety for halal, that Indonesia have to implement mandatory and for the food in 2024. Currently in the transition period since last year, October last year, until 2024. And the other is for another sector like pharmaceutical and also biological product. And in the Sustainable Development Goal, we also contribute for F&B industry to contribute in achievement in the Sustainable Development Goal related to food safety, such as no poverty, such zero hunger, good health and well-being, clean water and sanitation, and responsible consumption and production. So close related to the food and beverage industry. So it's believed that the more prosperous community is, the more food safety awareness will be. And in the food supply chain, as I adopted from the FAO, Food System Development Paradigm, this is the contribution of the food industry to make a better food supply. And we have to ensure food safety along the food supply chain, from the farmers until to the consumer, from farm to table, from farm to fork. And we have to assure the availability, affordability, and also the consumption that is safe for human consumptions. And as mentioned by Prof. Pur, food safety is a shared responsibility. So we take a responsibility according to the Indonesian food law, as already explained by Prof. Pur, according to food law and government regulation about food safety. And we have to do food sanitation, food ingredients, and also the GMO, food irradiation, standard packaging, quality assurance, and food safety halal. All these factors already included in the government regulation about food safety. So industry have to take responsibility, especially food industry and the processed food. This and monitoring by the National Agency for Drug and Food Control, and also Ministry of industry. This is according to government regulations. And the monitoring and surveillance scattered many stakeholders, multi-stakeholder, as mentioned by Prof. Pur. So that's why this is the challenges in food safety system in Indonesia. For example, fresh food from the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Affairs, and other food produced by SMEs, monitoring by the National Agency Drug and Food Control, and also regional governments. And ready-to-eat food monitored by Ministry of Health and also regional government. So scattered monitoring from the multi-agencies. So that's why the responsibility of the food industry and the challenges we have to assuring food safety and the food supply chain end-to-end and compliance to the standard and regulation. This is very important. So that's why I also encourage all members to comply with the standard and regulations. The challenges is the public awareness due to the economic reasons. Sometimes mindset of the players, business operators, just only the economic reasons, the cheap price without concern about the food safety, both in the consumers and producers sometimes. And intentionally due to the competition and looking for a cheap price, lack of knowledge, especially the SME players, food fraud sometimes, and inadequate infrastructure along the food supply chains, availability of clean water and sanitation facilities, registration and supervision of food safety are spread across the various ministries and agencies as mentioned by Prof. Pur, and also the readiness of food safety surveillance and monitoring system due to the geographic, infrastructure, human resources, etc. Actually, there is no food security without food safety, as mentioned by Prof. Pur. So that's I like these words, and so that's why all consumers have to receive equal level of protections, and consumers are informed about the standard of protection that are being applied, and all food producers, whether domestic and foreign, are equitably treated through application of the same level of safety. Actually, Indonesia has Indonesian Integrated Food Safety Systems initiated in 2001. And also this is the Food Intelligence Network that are established in Indonesia. And also Indonesia have Indonesian Rapid Alert System for Food and Feed. Also Indonesia has a Indonesia Food Testing Laboratory Network, and Indonesian Risk Assessment Center, and also Risk Management Program. This is all already established. The challenges is implementation, consistency implementation, as I mentioned by Prof. Pur, and also scattered in the multi-agency. So that's why the collaboration is very important to do this. So that's why I would like to invite the collaboration, quadruple helix, from all the multi-stakeholder, from the governments, from industry, academic, and also the community and consumers, especially awareness and careness of the consumers. From the academic can contribute the knowledge and education, and also from the industry, compliance and also responsibility, compliance to the regulation standard, and regulators to regulate, more facilitating and monitoring, and also educating all the industries and also consumers. So that's why it's very important, these collaborations, to build a sustainable business, to produce the added value to the product, because the added value product is part of added value product is food safety, and also food support to public health, and also ensuring food safety, and to build a trust. This is to build the ultimate goals is to build a food safety culture in Indonesia. This is the challenges for all stakeholders to achieve this culture. Thank you very much for your kind collaboration, attention, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Adi, for giving an overview from business enterprise point of view. Yeah. So now, yeah, your presentation is also complementing Prof. Pur presentation. Before we go to question and answer, I have to let the participant and other speakers to know that Prof. Siegel and Prof. Recep Levy has the appointment at 10 o'clock, so they have to leave. This is very unfortunate, but I have asked Prof. Levy to answer the question and type the answer on the question and answer section, and he has done so. So I will forward all the question to Prof. Levy and Prof. Ziegler by email, and then we will convey that to participant because the question is fairly interesting. And now we go to question and answer. Before that, maybe I'd like to ask Prof. Sinsky before answering all the questions to the participant. Prof. Sinsky, are you there?
I am here and I'm awake.
Okay, just give you just a short opinion about what you hear from this presentation from the Indonesian part.
My first impression, it's the food security, food supply system in Indonesia is very complex.
Now you
okay. Number two, there's too many players in the game, too many agencies and talking and so forth. Three, I wonder, and maybe somebody could ask me, how much money is spent on food safety operations in Indonesia? Like per capita, do you spend $1? Do you spend $2, $5, $10? So we can see, have an indication of the amount of financial commitment to food safety operations in the U.S. I mean, in Indonesia.
Well, Pak Adi, can you answer that? Do you have any idea, maybe from your company, for example?
Yeah, especially the cost for food safety. Of course, frankly speaking, for the medium big company, we care about the food safety. So that's why we put some costs to be support with some cost to the food safety system. Not only food safety and safe food, but also in halal system. So that's why this is very important for Indonesian consumers. So
you have numbers, percentage of the allocation, or just approximately, maybe?
Yeah, maybe in the production cost, maybe around 5 to 10% of the food safety systems from the production cost. Yeah.
There is some problem with the internet. I can't hear. I can't hear you. Oh, now can you repeat that again?
Okay. Okay, I think it's around 5% from the total production cost.
Can you hear Prof. Sinsky?
Yeah, I heard him. It's a significant number, no doubt about it.
My internet is not stable.
Yeah, because you know, Prof. Sinsky, we have to implement all the food system from the end to end. And we have to monitor from the raw material as well. We have to make an audit in from the supplier. We have to audit the supplier and food safety audit, and also the internal audit in our factory, and also we still have to monitor the food safety factors in the market. This is our responsibility.
You know, I understand. That's very important, no doubt about it. In trying to think about how one would think about how would you use the approach that Professor Levy has done in the food safety analytics and so forth in China. How could you apply that into Indonesia? And it appears to me that what is needed is to define specific questions that need to be answered, and then two, develop a strategy for specific case studies. If you try to move in applications of machine learning, artificial intelligence, and improving and reducing risk in supply chains, I think what one will end up with will be a lot of noise. But it's no doubt there are many challenging problems, as I can see, in the food system dynamics in Indonesia.
Mm.
I actually think it's if the goal is to make Indonesia the safest food products exported in this part of the world, then we can think about some strategies to do that.
Mm. Yes, it's a big homework.
Well, I think the problem is you can pass all the laws you want, right? We have all kinds of rules at MIT, and most of the time they're a nuisance. If you get on the fundamental principles and you address some of these in your presentations on food safety and culture, and if you develop a strategy to implement that, I think you will have major economic impact in the food industry in Indonesia.
Yeah, I'm thinking about Dr. De Seeger presentation. That's it's a real examples how to improve the margin of the smallholders with only one commodity, which is palm oil. So we may be able to do that kind of approach.
Well, I think Joanne, Professor Ziegler, would really, she had to also leave, and that's why we had to have her go first.
Yes.
I think her approach is very, very important for what I would call the social economic development in the country, improving the education, lifestyle, and applications of the small landholders is really very important. And that can be applied to many different aspects in the food systems, from fishing, from shrimp farming, and so forth in Indonesia. And I think the good thing is, from my sense, she really likes working in Indonesia.
Oh, oh, glad to hear that.
No, I think she's very fond of it. I think she has this Dutch, I shouldn't say that. I think she likes it a lot, from what I can gather.
Yeah, she even speaks Indonesia, so she must, really into it, because he has to deal directly with the farmers, the small farmer. Yeah.
Well, that every developing or developed country now has to deal with this, because the days of exploiting small farmers is over. What I will do for Joanne and Restef Levy, Restef and Joanne independently have several publications that have come out, and I'll gather these publications that they've submitted on their current work. The food safety work in China, Restef's team has had such a impact in this, and how he runs this program is very interesting. The collaborators in China, those are supported through the Walmart Foundation through MIT. So there's no Chinese government support. It's all independent of the government, but people work with the government and they have interactions with it. And now the FDA in the US wants to start some programs very similar to what Professor Levy has developed in China. He gave the keynote speech in that area, and people were very excited about it, including the FDA, who, by the way, 5 years ago didn't listen to him in one bit.
All right, all right. So it just has to keep doing it, yeah, until someone listens.
I'm very proud to just be associated with the program. He didn't give you all the team players and the dynamics, but he did. One thing you should realize that most of that program was done of all the data analysis and analysis of all the websites and et cetera. That was only done with 3 students, 3 postdocs, three people, 7 million data points.
It's impressive.
Just shows you the power of you if you can work out the strategies and what question you want to answer.
Yeah. All right. Thank you then. Any more?
Pratno,
Yes.
can I jump in?
Oh yes, you can. You may ask directly. Yeah, for the speaker first, then we can answer the participant. Yeah.
Thank you. I think a suggestion from Professor Rosinsky is very important, and I agree. Especially if we would like to find some kind of technological solution. I think we really have to define, what kind of product, and because every product has a different story behind it, different culture in terms of the business related to that particular product, and also different set of a government agency who are responsible for that specific product. So defining that product and then trying to understand all of the ecosystem related to that product is very important. And then trying at the beginning, trying to agree on the objective that we would like to achieve. Because again, the food safety problem is different from different products. So I agree with that. So if we can start like defining, using maybe Adi can help trying to identify one. We have to start small, okay? One product that can be used as a model, and then after that we can demonstrate the result, the impact, the economic impact as well, health impact as well, if possible, trying to show that, okay, this kind of initiative work, and then we can replicate or we can use that approach to other products as well. So that's just my thought, because the assessment of Professor Sinsky is right, is very correct. That the system is very complex, and Adi also mentioned about that. So thank you. It's just my 2 cents of that. Thank you.
No, I think it's very important. And actually, the way we started in China, it's a roundabout story, the way we really started. But we looked at, you may have heard, what the hell's the name of that dog food problem we ran in? Jerky treat problem of contamination. So we did an analysis for the FDA on all the supply chain and adulterated foods. And actually, even though the analytical chemists couldn't determine what the active agent is, we could really identify where the product was coming from.
Analytics.
Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is we did a lot of analysis on the chicken industry in China, which is very complicated. But the Walmart Foundation was or is interested in a very specific problem, which you demonstrate you have to be a specific question or problem. And that was that the fish sold in the Walmart stores stores and supermarkets are sold out of fish tanks, but they come from the fish farms. They're contaminated or treated with antibiotics and other molecules to keep the fish looking healthy and alive as they're sold live. And so that's the problem we figured out on how to solve and show where rapid testing is going. And that's what Charlie shows, why you need this rapid test to determine the presence of an antibiotic almost the minute it's unloaded from the aquaculture farm.
Yeah, I would just add to that.
Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add to that, I mean, one of the importance of why rapid testing technologies are crucial is because there are so many different players in these supply chains in which this adulteration happens. And when you only test at the end of the supply chain, one, you're not using a rapid test. But let's say you find out that there was some antibiotic usage at the end of the supply chain, you don't know who to prosecute, right? You don't know if it's the wholesale market, you don't know if it's the people that were transporting the aquaculture products, and you don't know if it's the farmers. And so that makes it really difficult from a regulatory agency to make any actionable response to that chloramphenicol or any other antibiotic adulteration. And so that's why it's crucial, at least in our opinion, that rapid testing technologies have to be put in place where when you have the volume of shipments moving through these channels, you can quickly assess what's good, what's bad, and then on top of that, create documentation to know, all right, the farmer wasn't the issue, but during the transport process, because we know that, because of transportation and different environmental factors, they were concerned about the fish looking healthy at the market. So the people doing the transportation added the antibiotic. And so that's the person that you need to target. So that's why, creating better rapid testing technologies are so important, and multiplex technologies for that matter. And, we're not there yet, but we're working towards it.
Well, we have the vision. Well, what we need a lot of people to help us get where we want to go, because I think we have the vision, we have some concepts, we have some principles being established, but what we don't have is the field test data yet on the utility and the methodology.
All right. Thank you. So, Brzezinski, can we move to answer the participant question?
Whose questions?
Participants.
Oh, sure.
All right. Because Prof. Levy also has already left, do you think we can send him directly by email?
Sure.
Yes, some
sure.
of
And I don't know the depth or the actual questions, but Charlie's very active in the program. I am. We can provide insights, and if we can't answer it, we'll say, well, this is Professor Levy's responsibility.
We can try our best. I know that Professor Levy answered a number of the questions in the chat already to try to account for that.
Dr. Mada, can you also display the question for Prof. Joanne and Prof. Levy as well, who maybe Prof. Sinsky and Dr. Charlie can answer it as well. So please display the question. So
Okay, Professor.
yes, everybody can see and also listen.
Okay, Professor. Start from.
Right. So the question for Prof. Levy that hasn't been answered is the software for the data that he used available. Is it available to be downloaded for anyone, or where can I get that software? If not, would you explain the concept of method using the software related to the data?
Charlie,
Yes.
I'm sure it will be readily available, but Charlie, you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it so much as software. I mean, these are algorithms that were written in code and developed by by Levy's group in order to quickly probe internet websites, determine and do a lot of data analysis to determine, where testing results at various wholesale markets, etc. I will say though that I don't know about getting the software, but a lot of the results from all that work is being put together in this sort of graphical interface that he did show in his presentation with collaboration from an industrial partner called iSoftStone, where you can sort of take these aggregated data results and have a better understanding, at least in China at the moment, since we're focused, where testing is occurring in these wholesale markets, where are there high positive rates of usage of antibiotics, etc., and starting to get a better understanding of tracing these supply chains. But I don't think that there's any software at the moment that's been developed. It's all been, written in code in-house.
Yeah, but what is happening though? There are a couple PhD students, their theses, I guess what Nick's thesis will be done in the spring. That will be public available. And then the publications coming out, which will clearly be publicly available. And the Walmart Foundation, who sponsored this work, wants it to be disseminated as widely as possible. So we'll be able to do that. And I think the best way to do this is just to send an email to myself or Restef Levy, and he can respond to it. There will be no way that there's anything trying to be proprietary or hidden here in this aspect. I think the unique aspect that's come out of this very aggressive data analytics program now is one can think about how these wholesale markets should be designed to improve the sanitation and food handling in the systems, which I think is the very valuable aspect of it.
All right. Next question, please, Dr. Mada. This is very technical. Could you explain more detail about risk scoring and outcomes parameters? What kinds of parameters should have the matches?
That is a technical question, and I'm going to defer to my esteemed colleague, Dr. Swafford, or to Restef.
I think that's a question we need to pass on to Restef.
Okay, next question. This is Sivi Gayatri. This is a lecturer. In your opinion, what the Indonesian government needs to do to address farm risk management, especially in smallholder farming system? Thank you.
Well, I think actually, my personal opinion, and I haven't talked to Joanne about this, but the big food manufacturers, big ingredient buyers want to have their sources of their food ingredients documented from throughout the value chain, where it comes from. And there's laws being passed in the US with the FDA that the managers are responsible for the quality of the ingredient. So what you have when you have a really large, small holders putting ingredients into the major supply chains, the issue of where the product came from becomes a challenge. So I think there has to be some new methodologies developed so one can follow the traceability and sustainability of these products from the small landholders.
Yeah.
If you're a major food company, even though you saw she's supported by Unilever there, which is important, et cetera, it's very hard to deal with controlled harvesting because you don't know where the product comes from these small landowners. So you need some system. I don't know what.
Yeah. That's our big, very big homework. Yes.
I would just add, well, two things. One, to the previous question, because I just noticed that Professor Levy actually did answer the question in the chat, that for the specific risk scores question, so mainly it's just the failure rate and the food test conducted at the market or from the product sourced from the market. So I mean, that is usually what the data scraping that his group does, is to scrape all of these testing data from these various provincial websites or city websites to try to get a bigger picture of the current failure rates within China. I would say more broadly, one of the biggest challenges for this project is because there are so many different, so talking about China right now, there are so many different government agencies that are involved in doing the testing, and they're spread across, hundreds, if not thousands of websites based on what province you're in, what city you're in, etc. And they're not speaking with one another. And so it becomes really difficult to get a bigger picture of the ground truth of the failure rates of these areas, because all the testing data is spread across so many websites. And so a lot of the work that he's doing is just data scraping these websites, consolidating all these failure tests, and then being able to give a more ground truth as to where the failure is taking place. So I hope that makes a little bit more sense.
Very good.
Oh, yes.
And then I would, so to also support Recev's answer to this question here on the slide. So Recev's thought, which I agree with, is that the welfare of the farmers is key with support and accountability. And the way I would think about this is similar to what we think about with, let's say, these like smallholder farming systems in China as well. So if I'm a smallholder farmer, and I hear there's an avian flu outbreak, and I'm, have a small amount of chickens that I need to sell, my immediate reaction is I'm going to pump these chickens full of antibiotics, because if these chickens don't survive the avian flu outbreak, I'm done for. And that's, in the long run, is not the way to go about it. So what really needs to happen is that the government needs to be able to understand the situation and then support these farmers, especially during tough times like an avian flu outbreak, etc. But at the same time, creating the testing capabilities to hold them accountable to make sure it doesn't happen. So part of that is just going into teaching the farmers, understanding what better practices are where you can avoid using antibiotics while still having good products.
And that's what's going to come out of Joanne's work in Indonesia. And the other product that comes up out of this data analysis that Restef and the team does is they can analyze and determine the risk of various fish species most likely to be contaminated by antibiotics. You would think it's not random, it's actually very targeted.
Oh, right. Oh, Dr. Charlie, can I
add some?
Yes, please. Please, Mr. Adi.
Can I add some?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Retno. Yeah, thank you, Prof. Retno. As mentioned by Prof. Shinsky, that suggestion from Prof. Shinsky to monitoring and implement the traceability system to the farmers, I think this have done by several companies in Indonesia, especially the big companies. We have done it, and we have what we call it a closed loop system. We monitor the farmers from the beginning, and then we educate them, and also the monitoring and control all the quality, food safety system, etc. But the problem in Indonesia is a huge number of the SMEs and small farmers. So this is This is the big challenges in Indonesia. Not many companies has the capability to collaborate with the farmers directly, and also some mindset of the farmers sometimes they don't understand what is the food safety, what is the traceability, etc. So this is the big challenges in Indonesia. So that's why I like to learn from the Prof. Levy from the lesson learned from China. Yeah, lesson learned from China, the food safety system in China. I think if we can implement it in Indonesia to make a database, food safety database, and also how to collaborate with small farmers, this is a good collaboration, I think, Prof. Retno.
Yeah, I think you can form I like big programs, but I find out big programs are hard to get funded. I mean, big programs in dollars, but that's very hard. And then you got to worry about all that money. So I think actually formulating a reasonably sized project for proof of principle demonstration utility, so you can build the human resources, the technical resources to implement and execute on these types of approaches in Indonesia would be quite attractive.
Yeah, have to find.
Yeah.
Is it better to be funded by non-governmental entities rather than government? Although we have to work closely with government authority, Ms. Profsinski?
Well, yeah. I find getting money from companies is hard because they want to make money. They don't want to give it to you. But they actually, the companies are in the end are the ones responsible for ensuring the quality of their food products. So I think you can work out I would say a consortium of companies that would help define the problem, help define the questions. That can be fairly effectively. We run in the Center for Biomedical Innovation. We run several consortium with industry and biomanufacturing. And this group, in a pre-competitive way, have been able to define very useful, very specific research programs for the industry. And after getting some preliminary data and approaches and proof of principles, we've been able to get significant funding from the US government to, especially the FDA, to implement on these concepts that industry divides that improves the overall quality of the biomanufacturing products. Same approach in foods.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Sinsky. Dr. Mada, can we go to the next question, please? Yeah, Prof. Pur and Prof. Pur, yeah. Prof. Pur, are you there?
Yes.
Yes, this is from Delhi, Indonesia. Please, can you read yourself? I would like to know about new issue about regulation from Indonesian law 33 year 2014, year to 2014. Halal assurance, what the effect domino to food supply chain so far? And regarding this peraturan pemerintah number 69 about food, I only found BPOM, regulation number 21, year 2019. Can you cross-check that, please?
Yes. Yes, thank you. For the question number one, I think Pa Adi maybe can answer that, but as far as I know, the provision for certification, I think it's been postponed. I believe it is until 2024 officially, and also there is some changes with respect to Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja. Probably Pak Adi will be able to say a few words about that. Yeah. But I believe that the managing halal system in Indonesia is is very critical in determining, or in order for Indonesia to be able to develop as a hub or as a center for halal food production. I think needs some lot of, what do you call it, creative and innovative approach in terms of the regulation. And so far, I think the main aspect covered by the regulation, in my opinion, is very much still in protecting or in providing consumer. Okay, but how to use these tools and this regulation tool to improve the competitiveness of the industry, I think some innovative approach need to be developed. So maybe Pak Adi again will be able to say a few words of that. The second one, yeah, I think I have already answered in the chat, but I think I made some typo there. It's not the number 69, but number 86. Sorry. So this is the new government regulation replacing the old one. This is the government regulation specifically on food safety, tentang keamanan pangan, number 86, 2019. Yeah, thank you very much.
Right. Thank you. So it's
I
a number
studied a little bit
86.
the hollow food certification needs in many applications, and primarily in Malaysia. And what I found out is what's really needed is to have a secure system where the packages cannot be altered, or once it's produced in Hala, it goes all the way through the system and not at the end where a food product is just wrapped with a labeling process. But I think there's tremendous economic incentive to do the hollow labeling and rigorous process control correctly, because that could potentially be a very big export product for many countries in the Middle East and so forth.
It is.
I think it's a unique opportunity if you can really get it right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And educate the consumer that a hollow label from Indonesia has real value and meaning. It represents.
All right.
Yes, I think I agree. So it should be, that's why I mentioned it should be more than just certification, but the system to for the food authentication, integrity, how to assure that. I think that's very important as well, aspect of that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Sinsky.
Thank you, Prof. Sinsky. Dr. Mada, can you go to next one? Dr. Charlie. Dr. Charlie, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay, you're not sleepy yet, right?
I'm getting there, but I'm still going strong.
Yes, all right. Oh, well, you're still young. You have to be up now.
Yeah, I mean, if Professor Sinsky is still awake, then I have no excuse.
Yeah, he can't beat you there, right? The method that you developed, is it only able to check 3 type antibiotics? How about the other antibiotic types such as beta-lactam class? And for the testing kits you have developed, is it already commercialized? And the second one, is it possible to develop nanobodies to check the adulteration of materials as tools for food fraud identification? Please, your time. Okay.
Sure. So the first question, so for the first part, I would say that the nanobody that we were able to discover and engineer, the one that I talked about against chloramphenicol, basically combined to chloramphenicol and similar analogs. So those are other amphenicol antibiotics such as fluorphenicol, thiamphenicol, and I think there's one other one. All of those have a very specific mechanism of action, and you could theoretically use any of those nanobodies that I showed as a way to detect those. However, part of the reason that we use nanobodies is for its high specificity and selectivity. And we do know, I didn't show this data, that if you add another very different antibiotic, you do not see any binding whatsoever to this nanobody. So I would say that this is very much a very specific antibody against this very specific class of drugs. At the moment, I have no way to predict if I decided to, let's say, inject a llama with a different type of antibiotic, could it make nanobodies against that molecule? That still needs to be done. And so, yeah, I don't know the answer to a beta-lactam class of antibiotics simply because we haven't tried to do it yet. And then for testing kits, so I should be clear, we haven't actually commercialized anything yet with this. We basically, what we have right now is the recognition element, which is the thing that binds to the molecule we're looking for. And one of the big things that we're working on right now in our lab is developing that testing technology. And once we have that established, we hope that it'll be somewhat easier to then take any other nanobody of interest and use that same technology in an easy fashion. So if we can figure out how to get this optical sensing system to work, then we could take another nanobody, let's say against COVID-19, and be able to detect for SARS-CoV-2 in a rapid manner. And then for
you've made antibodies to COVID-19, right?
I have been able. So the great thing about nanobodies is this. So another group separate from us was able to discover and find nanobodies against COVID-19, and they published the sequence of this. Once the sequence is published, I can take the sequence and make it in the lab. If I want to make an antibody in the lab, a traditional antibody, that is extremely difficult because you have to use mammalian cell culture. It's much more expensive, time consuming. This is one of the biggest advantages that nanobodies have, is that because we can make these in bacteria, and bacteria are really easy to genetically manipulate, it's very easy to make any nanobody once you know its sequence. And then the second question, so I'm not positive what's meant by materials, but I guess what I'll say is, assuming that you have a nanobody against a target that you're looking for, yes, we think it's possible to check any sort of sample for that compound. What we don't know, and what we still need to figure out, is how much will sample preparation affect the ability of this nanobody to bind. Will pH or the amount of salt in the solution affect its ability to bind to the antibiotic? We think that's going to be fairly minimal because of the really tight and high specificity of these nanobodies, but that remains to be seen. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Well, what happens here is that the development aspects of the application of this technology become really hard, because as Dr. Swafford is indicating, you have to make sure it works under a variety of conditions, food samples, if there is any preparation needed, and so forth. So that's why you need it. You need an interdisciplinary team to move this forward.
All right. Dr. Charlie, can I ask one question that maybe also just make it clearer? You mentioned,
Sure.
about multiplex optical array. Do you also use nanobodies or antibodies?
We're envisioning using nanobodies with this array. And the reason for that is because nanobodies are much smaller, they can more densely couple to the surface of a carbon nanotube. So basically, you can get many more nanobodies attached to one carbon nanotube than you can antibodies. And so that is able to reduce the level of detection.
Right.
Or increase the level of detection, I should say.
More sensitive.
So that's our thought process. Plus, because it's small, we can modify it easily so that we can attach it in various ways to the carbon nanotube for detection purposes.
Oh, it's very interesting. I hope someone in the science MIPA, Faculty of Science, listen to this, because I think it's very interesting. Next question, Dr. Mada. Can we have the next question? Oh, this is from Prof. Por. Prof. Por, are you there?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Apart from the various legal regulations that have been established, there are still many small traders who still use dangerous substance in their food processing, such as the chemical for thickening food or coloring materials that are not suitable for human consumption. In your opinion, what is the most appropriate way for us as consumers to recognize what food is not good for consumption, and how can the government suppress traders who don't pay attention to food safety? It's quite difficult, actually.
Yes. Okay. Maybe. Okay. Yeah, I think this is the fact. I mean, you can find this almost wherever you go, especially for the small and medium and micro enterprises. So this is a challenge, and the number, in terms of the number, small and micro enterprise are huge. There's so many of them. So again, education is very important, and in addition to education, especially that being responsible, not to use non-food grade ingredient as a food ingredient, for example. They have a responsibility to avoid that, and to educate them about the potential negative impact on the community, on the health of the population. I think is very important. But in addition to that, because sometimes the condition they face in the reality is very difficult, economically, socially, and so that this is a responsibility for the government to trying to improve the condition by providing to them access to the correct food additive. I mean, once the substance has been categorized as a food additive, is considered to be safe, considered to be suitable to be used as a food ingredient. So this is very important. But sometimes, as I mentioned, they have difficulty in assessing that. They have to go far away and also buy at a high price, so that finally, because at the end of the day, they have to sell their food, and the price is very important to be low in order for the consumer to be able to buy. So it's very complex. The issue is not only food safety, but also social and probably cultural. But again, in my opinion, this is responsible for the government to provide them access to the safe food ingredients, so that they can, if they need that, they can easily get it. So this is probably, difficult situation, as Professor Retno mentioned, Professor Mulwani mentioned, because as a consumer, I think again have to be vigilant. If you see, for example, food with a very bright color, for example, that are not usual, but again, this is very subjective. You have to be, a little bit cautious on that, But for processed food, they are really labeled, for example, packaged and monitored by the people. They have a label, so the consumer can read the label. But not all foods are at that category. So this is the difficulty. But there are so many examples of that. So I don't know exactly. I have any real answer to that, but except that trying to push the government to be more active in providing. That's what I call food safety infrastructure. Sometimes access to clean water is also very difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
And this is a basic one. Okay, so there's a local government need to be able to provide the basic food safety infrastructure.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll stop there.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah. Local.
Prof. Retno.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Adi,
Prof.
do you
Retno.
want to add? please.
I think, I will add some. As I mentioned in my presentations, we have to build the food safety cultures. The approach from two sides, from the players, business operator, and also from the consumer itself, because we have to build the consumer awareness about the food safety. Otherwise, it's very difficult to control all food system in Indonesia. I think not only Indonesia, but many countries that has the same situation as mentioned by Prof. Pur. It's very difficult situation. So that's why if the consumers are aware, consumers care about the food safety, and then they don't want to buy the unsafe food, and then no producer produce it. I think this is the two-side approach.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
This is a very complicated problem, as you clearly have stated. But if I were a policymaker, I would develop a strategy. The most susceptible population is infants and babies, right? To adulterated food because of, one, their body mass, and two, it can have irreparable damage for a long time.
Yes,
So
yes.
I think I would start on the quality of food for the infant industry, and then I would determine what is the most significant food system that is used for infants, and then work out a fingerprint standardization process for the quality of that product. Charlie and I tried to develop biological fingerprints for various food extract systems that I think we were too advanced for our thinking to make it practical. But a long-term goal, I think, if I were setting policy, I would set policy on infant formula, infant baby food as the way to a healthy beginning of all system.
Right. Right.
I agree with that, Robert. No,
Proper. Yeah.
that's why I mentioned that government needs. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, please.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned that the government needs to develop a risk ranking, based on the rate, and they start with the high risk food. So they have to identify the potential hazard and also the exposure or the rate of consumption, so that they can identify which type of food is very high in terms of rate. And I agree, because of the body mass and also state of development, baby food, for example, is one of the priority that government need to pay attention more. But not only that, but several other as well need to be identified and develop the program to improve the safety of it. Thank you.
Pak Adi, do you have?
Retno? Yeah, I will add some. Okay, I agree with Prof. Sinsky and Prof. Pur. Actually, in practice, government has implemented some regulations and standards already in place, and also the National Agency Drug and Food Control already make a category for high risk, medium risk, and low risk, and this is already in place for the standard and the regulation. So the problem is the implementation. The problem is in the implementation. So that's why under the new law, what we call it the omnibus law or Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja, in the new law, we will do the risk-based assessment for all the implementation. So this is very important. Later, the business operator or the food industry has to make a self-assessment. What is your product? This is in the category product. It's a high risk, medium risk, or low risk. And then the regulator and the controller, national agencies have to monitor in the post-market. So this is the challenges in Indonesia.
All right. Any more comments from Professor Zinsky? It's enough. Okay, next question, please. Mr. Adi, this is for you. COVID-19 caused many problems that give rather big impact, especially in food industry.
Problem to give rather big impact, especially again for the actually micro, small enterprise. Maybe we can call UKM will give a lot of contribution to have this problem. In your opinion, how about this case? So, frankly speaking, many SMEs in Indonesia impacted by the COVID-19, especially they are producing the snack food for the tourism, for the activity that has been stopped already for several months. So that's why they impacted to all stakeholders, not only the big companies, but also the SMEs. I don't think so the SMEs contribution can help to solve the impact of the COVID-19. So the COVID-19, all sectors impacted. But I understand that many SMEs now producing foods for supplying for the home cooking, like a frozen food and other kinds of food that support for the home cooking. So this is a trend in SMEs industries.
It's interesting that regarding COVID-19 in the food industry, the workers in the meat industry are very, very confined and work very closely together. And they've been a big source of contamination or cases of COVID-19 outbreaks. And so I think those food industries where you have a dense population of people become a challenge to run. So you need strategies to separate people as well as their interactions with the food systems. So it tells you you can control it, but you have to, or you can minimize it, but you have to be think of different operations.
Right. Sudah, are you finished?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Dr. Mada, next one. Dr. Charlie, this is for you.
Yeah. So so I think maybe there's a misunderstanding. So definitely these nanobodies are very good at detecting chloramphenicol and are very accurate at doing so. And I would say that maybe what the question is referring to is the fact that it does bind, maybe not as well, but pretty well to other analogs of chloramphenicol, which is true. But as I said in the earlier question, when it comes to other antibiotics that are not in the same class, we don't see any binding whatsoever. So, and this is not necessarily a bad thing. If you're in the food safety system and you're really just checking to make sure that no one is using this class of antibiotics, if you can have a nanobody that can tell you either yes, they are using one of these 3 or 4, they're not using any, that's a pretty good start. And then I guess to the second question, are they only found in camels? For the most part, yes. Well, any what I would call camelids, which include camels, alpacas, and llamas. Actually, the species or the animal we used for our experiments was a llama. And there's a farm outside the university somewhere where some llama was injected with chloramphenicol to generate these antibodies. But there are a number of other species that make these other special antibodies as well, namely sharks. But I don't think anyone has any interest in working with sharks.
Okay.
So anyway, but the nice thing about it is camels and alpacas and llamas, those are things that in certain parts of the world are, those are domestic animals that are farmed on a regular basis, easy to work with, easy to generate antibodies from. So, yeah, so.
All right.
One application or one way to use these nanobodies, which we have not explored yet, but Professor Levy is very interested in. He argues that the specificity of the nanobody doesn't have to be perfect, but you can use arrays of various sensitivities of nanobodies to, let's say, your target analyte, and then you can use mathematical analysis to determine presence or absence in what levels of nanobodies. We haven't gone that way yet, but that's a way to improve the applications of statistical analysis for determining the presence or absence and what concentration of a given antibiotic.
All right. Dr. Charlie.
Yep.
Yes, regarding nanobodies. So do we really, is there any other way that we can produce nanobodies without injecting the antigen into camel? For example, as you mentioned before, if we have the sequence and then we can produce the nanobodies.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So two things. One, at the moment, if you have an unknown compound and you want to know, is there an antibody that binds against it? At the moment, and you don't know the sequence, you have to go through a llama in order to make that compound. But once you have the nanobody and maybe even the structure as we do, now you can model that nanobody in such a way that perhaps you can learn what mutations you can make in this nanobody to change the binding pocket so it binds to something else. But I would say what's kind of fascinating about that question is, so the real holy grail of any protein research, the holy grail is I could give you any sequence and I can tell you what the structure of that protein looks like. Because crystallography, getting that structure is not easy. But if I can tell you, give me a sequence, I'll give you the structure, that's the holy grail. And I think this week in Nature or Science, there was a big paper that came out that's now saying that they have the best algorithm by far computationally that they can take sequences and convert them into structures that you can analyze. Unfortunately, it came out this week. I don't remember the name of it, but yeah, I think it's really exciting in the scientific community, and I'd be excited to use it myself, because if we can avoid going back to a llama every time you want to get a new nanobody against something, it really opens possibilities, not just for our work, but pretty much for anyone doing any sort of protein work whatsoever.
Wow. You use algorithm as well?
University of Washington did that work in Seattle.
Yeah, I'll have to get back to you, Tony. And I saw some news articles about it, but I'm not. I haven't read the details of the paper yet.
Oh,
yeah, I haven't either.
Well, I hope if you find, can you email me?
Yes, for sure, for sure.
Thank you, Director Charlie. All right. Okay, we have 3 minutes left. Dr. Mother, do you think that we have enough, because we have to close at 11:30 and time just running so fast and there are still many questions? I think if we don't have time, I will forward to Prof. Sinsky and Dr. Charlie in the group so they can answer and convey to the participants. So
be happy to answer any questions by email.
We all are, but it is getting late, so I think our clarity of answering questions is getting unfocused.
All right, Dr. Mada, so I think we can end the answer and question here. I give the time back to you so you can hand it to Vice Rector for closing remarks. Thank you all. Dr. Mada, time is yours.
Thank you very much, Prof. Retno, for the incredible discussion. And thank you very much for our outstanding and incredible keynote speakers. To be honest, since I'm not a researcher or lecturer who working with food industries or food-related subjects, but today I got a lot of enrichment for a new knowledge. Thank you very much for all the keynote speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, to close our international webinar, I would like to invite our Vice Rector for Research and Innovation of Universitas Diponegoro, Semarang, to Professor Ambarianto, MSc PhD. Time and screen are yours.
Thank you, Mada. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Again, on behalf of Universitas Diponegoro, I would like to thank to all speakers. It has been very interesting presentation and discussion, starting from Prof. Sinsky, Prof. Bezeger, Prof. Levy, Mr. Ford, Prof. Paul, and Pak Adi Lukman. I'm sorry.
Difficult name.
All information from all speakers give us new perspectives in regard to food supply chains. I think it seems to me that food supply chain is influenced by many different aspects, including food supply chain platform, data analytics, rapid detection capabilities, such as the detection for antibiotics, human health, law and regulations, proper technologies, and all of that for ensuring food safety in food supply chain. I can also see that based on the question from all participants and the discussion as a whole, this topic is very interesting related to food supply. Many things have been done, including regulation and technologies. However, many problems still there, including unexpected COVID-19 pandemic right now. I think there is a need genuine collaboration among stakeholders, including producer, government, distributors, scientists, and consumers, and others to develop strategy to solve this problem. I hope that all participants have learned something new and can give ideas what we can do next to improve food supply chain. Thank you again for speakers for sharing your knowledge to all of us. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Before we close our today's webinar, I would like to invite everyone to turn on your camera because we will take pictures
Can you turn on
together.
here?
Dalam ya, pardon me, Professor.
For picture, yes, please.
Yes, more pictures. So, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to turn on your camera before we close our international webinar. I hope that all of us, you can show your pretty and also handsome face so we can take pictures together.
Smile.
Well, it's going to be amazing to see, okay?
Yes, Professor. Please make sure that you can give the best smile in your face. So these pictures can be uploaded in our website, and then you can find the pictures there someday. Okay, so we have 4 pages for the pictures. So I will take the first page pictures. Smile, 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Okay, another page. The second page. 1, 2, 3. Okay, the third page. 1, 2, 3. Okay, the 1, 2, 3. And ladies and gentlemen, before that, we have special door prize for the best question. 6 until 10 questions, and we see that the total question is 10. So I think all of the chosen question will get the door prize, but make sure that you will get the door prize. So make sure that you already registered yourself in the attendance form in our Google form that I already shared in the chat room. So I will ask your maybe like mobile phone, because maybe it's kind of pulsa that we will transfer to you, yeah, to get more quota for internet access, and you can attend our next international webinar, because I do believe Prof. Ambar and Prof. Ratno currently they are already make another ingredient, yeah, to prepare another international webinar. Maybe not this year, but for next year, because Prof. Ratno and Prof. Ambar, they have another international program such as MIRA and also USID, and I do believe you will get more knowledges to attend our next webinar. So please stay tuned in Diponegoro University or Universitas Diponegoro Instagram, because we will give you update there, and also you can check this video later in the YouTube of UNDIP, and then we will upload this video so you can check the materials that are given by the keynote speakers. And thank you very much for Professor Pur Yangge, yes, Professor Pur, and also Pak Adi, who already sent me the file. I will send to every participants today, yeah, for the file. Well, only 2 of our keynote speakers who provide their files, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, thank you very much. This is my honor. My name is Mada Teriandala Siburo. I'm signing out. Thank you very much for your time and attendance. Have a great night. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you.
Be safe,
Thank you very
everyone.
much, Prof. Anthony, Prof. Sisi,
Bye.
Mr. Swoper, Charlie.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Mr. Charlie, I already
Thank you,
follow your
buddy.
Twitter, so we can contact later from Twitter.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Pak Pur, Mas Adi. Thank you.
Ya,
Terima kasih banyak,
Mas
Pak
Manda.
Adi.
Ya, apa kabar? Terima kasih.
Terima kasih, Mbak Ani.
Iya.
Ya,
Monggo.
Thank you, Prof. Sisi.
Sure.
Nur
My
Mahmudi.
pleasure.
Iya, Mas
kabar?
Adi. Syukur.
Oh,
Have a good
I want to thank Charlie for Dr. Swafford for helping on organizing this too. It was very helpful.
Yes. He is the one that make the title really good.
Yeah. Okay, guys, I will say goodbye. Good luck.
okay.
And good
Stay
night.
safe.
Ya,
Terima
have a
kasih,
nice
Pak
sleep,
Puryanto.
Prof. Sinski.
Yeah, good rest. Pak Adi, terima kasih ya, Pak Adi.
Ya, thank you, Ani, thank you, Mas Ambar.
Profetna, matur nuwun Profetna.
Oh iya, dikasih
Oke, assalamualaikum semuanya. Terima kasih.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum. Terima kasih, Mas Pur.
Ya, izin ya, izin live ya.
Terima kasih banyak, Bapak Ibu. Thank you very much.
Assalamualaikum.
And please make sure you already fill the attendance form ya, Bapak Ibu. So
Oh,
you
bagus
can get,
Rianto. Iya,
the certificate.
bagus.
Nggih, Prof.
Ya. Gimana?
Sehat nggih, Prof. Sehat
Iya.
selalu, Prof. Prof. Izin. Terima kasih Bu Retno. Bagus, sukses.
Oh, matur nuwun, iya.
Nuwun.
Oh iya, Pak Vitus matur nuwun, Prof Vitus.
Nggih, matur nuwun Prof Retno, matur nuwun.
Iya.
Bagus, nggih.
Ya, semoga ada yang follow up punya ide-ide nih. Terutama juga MIPA nih, kemudian FEP yang agribisnis.
Nggih, terus matur nuwun. Izin nggih, langsung.
Izin, monggo Prof Vitus,
Matur nuwun, Prof Retno, matur nuwun, nggih.
Kami, matur nuwun, rawuhnya Bu Erma. Bu Erma ya. Oh iya, nanti Ibu tak kalau dia sudah bangun besok pagi, Ibu tak minta PDF dari Prof Redsef dan lain-lain. Satu persatu aja karena mereka di sana sudah malam gitu. Ya.
sudah hampir subuh.
Kasihan. Cuma Prof. Shinski stamina luar biasa. Sudah sepuhnya begitu ya.
Beliau dahsyat. Dan ini juga Prof, ini para peserta juga pada aktif bertanya, jadi sangat bergairah lah Prof untuk seminar hari ini.
Iya, ya syukurlah. Meskipun registernya begitu banyak, tapi pada lupa dan mungkin kebanyakan sudah jadi linknya lupa atau gimana gitu ya.
Enggak, mereka lihat YouTube.
I see. Ya,
YouTube
bisa,
juga ada.
YouTube-nya bisa ya diakses ya?
Bisa Prof, kan nanti kan dari YouTube-nya Mada, nanti Mada download, kemudian nanti saya berikan ke bagian humas nih Prof. Karena kalau dari humas itu nggak bisa dadakan Prof.
Iya betul. Nanti linknya yang YouTube-nya Ibu diberi karena ada teman-teman ini yang terlambat pengen lihat YouTube-nya lagi.
Baik Prof, akan saya share nanti ke Prof.
Oke, sudah
Terima
ya.
kasih. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Masih ada yang Muhammad Azam. Ya, saya berharap teman-teman ini yang ide nanobodies itu dari teman-teman MIPA dan sebagainya mungkin punya ide yang mirip-mirip untuk detection system, tapi ya itu tadi jalannya yang dipotong aja gitu, yang holy grail tadi. Nah, berarti biotek tapi yang juga dikombinasi dengan kemampuan data analytics, algoritma untuk modeling gitu ya. Nah itu aduh yang muda-muda deh yang matanya dan semuanya itu. Maksudnya semoga memberi ide gitu untuk mereka mengembangkan ke arah sana gitu. Itu kan kita ketinggalan berapa puluh tahun, tapi kalau mereka bisa sedikit-sedikit lah mulai dari sekarang kan nanti saya setelah 5-10 tahun yang akan datang Ibu bisa mendengar Indonesia gitu.
Amin Prof.
Ya.
Amin Prof. Sudah mulai arah ke situ kok Prof, tapi kebanyakan Prof dari kerjasama yang RISPRO Prof. RISPRO-nya kemarin itu kebanyakan tentang tidak banyak sih Prof. Tadi ada 1 atau 2 yang saya lihat judulnya tentang nanobody.
Mada, nanti pertanyaannya tolong ditaruh di words. Pertanyaan tolong ditaruh di word yang sudah yang sudah maupun belum dibalas. Kalau yang sudah dibalas nanti ditulis sudah. Terus yang jawabannya Prof. Lati kan sudah. Nah nanti bisa Ibu kirim yang mana saja yang belum untuk bisa nanti dikirim ke peserta saat itu loh. Saat kirim sertifikat sekaligus survei aja. Sekaligus survei gitu.
Baik Prof. Nanti biar berarti saya siapkan umpan balik yang pertanyaan seperti kemarin ya Prof.
Iya, di Word aja semua, dikelompokkan Prof. Leti, Prof. Seigar, Dr. Charlie, kemudian Prof. Pur, Pak Adi gitu. Ya.
Baik Prof. Tapi tadi kalau tidak salah kalau untuk yang Prof. Revi semuanya sudah dijawab Prof.
Oh ya sudah, ya sudah semua ya.
Cuman
Prof. Seigar,
kecuali tadi Prof. Zigar hanya ada 1 pertanyaan Prof.
Oke, iya. Baik.
Yang tadi ada pertanyaan yang belum dijawab tadi ya untuk dokter ini Prof, Dokter Charlie ada 1 kalau nggak salah. Tinggal 1 kok Prof.
Oh ya sudah. Ya itu penting untuk ada diskusi seperti ini. Kalau tidak ada diskusi menjadi tidak bisa memberikan ide gitu loh. Mau ke arah mana gitu. Baik, Madam, semua rekamannya nanti Ibu diberi linknya atau diberi soft copy-nya untuk laporan gitu.
Baik, Prof.
Baik.
Ini ada stop dulu di YouTube ya. Ini sudah